Hey folks, Phil Davis, Ancestry Lands, ancestrylands.com. You're alive right now. Today is Thursday, February 16th. Lunch break with Uncle Phil, live and direct, folks. I have a special guest here, Mr. Alex Coombs of About You Outreach, About You NYC. He's folks, if you've been on before, you've seen my videos with him. Today we're gonna get going talking about a few things. But first, I want to welcome my guest, Mr. Alex Coombs. How are you today? Let me unmute him real quick.
Phil, thank you for having me on again.
Great, man. Great, great, great. I'm very thankful that you're able to get on to the show. Can you just please, for the people who may not know a little bit about you, haven't watched the other videos, tell them a little bit about what you do, where you're located at, and also how people find you.
Yeah, so I'm the co-founder of About You Outreach. We are a student athlete development mentorship organization, and we essentially provide strength and conditioning, test prep, mentorship, and for some of our college graduates, job placement. So we've been in existence now for 6 years. I've been in this line of business for 15 as a
Got,
community advocate, coach. So yeah,
got it. Can you give people a little bit about your background? Just personally, like your
sure.
credentials, what you've done.
No, absolutely. So my background is an exercise physiology. I also was an athlete in college. Um, I have been in the field, both in the collegiate ranks all the way down to the youth level
Mhm.
for 15 years now.
Right.
Um, from that standpoint, and then through the process, I got more and more involved into community development. So just exactly what impacts inner city communities.
Mhm.
I do it through the lens of sports, physical preparation, and academics.
Got it. Where are you all located? In what area, what state? Because some people may not, they may think you're here with me or somewhere else on location, but where can people find you at and where are you all located at?
So we're located in the New York City area. We serve the tri-state area.
Mm.
Our physical location is in Long Island City, Queens,
Right,
but we serve the tri-state, so Connecticut, New York,
right.
and New Jersey.
Got it. That's a great thing, man. I'm loving that. That's beautiful. I wanted to ask as well. So, what is the purpose? Because folks, to the listeners out there, to people watching the replay, make sure you all like, share, subscribe, and comment below. We appreciate it. Your engagement. We appreciate you watching. The people who have watched, I love to see. This is my fourth live stream, and I'm liking to see that you're building up a little base of people who are watching live. So, one of the things I wanted to ask is uh, I've done interviews with Avon Coburn, and he's been in the NFL. I went to high school with him. He's reached the pinnacle of what athletes strive for. You and I have spoken about that 1% of people who make it to the league. And for that 1%, let's focus on a little bit and give them some shine and time, or any of the athletes that are looking to accomplish that goal in mind. One of the things Avon told us that the deficiency in financial literacy, the understanding the value of money, the mechanisms of money, and really how to prepare for that success. So I wanted to bring you on because you are working with predominantly the younger athletes. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I think that what age group do you generally work with? And tell them a little bit about your program.
Well, so we start primarily with the younger group. So our program is from 5 all the way to post college graduation.
Hmm.
So we have a very large spectrum. But 5 years old, and we're at the point where now we have 28, 29-year olds. Our
Hmm.
first generation, so to speak. The
Okay.
majority of them are now either married, graduating from masters,
Hmm.
now getting into their first job and career. So
Right.
we serve the entire spectrum.
Got it. One thing that I absolutely love is that you have a biphasic approach to the which should be really the student athlete. that you focus on academics as well as the athletics. But at the same time, I feel and my experience is that a lot of parents simply drive the athletics forward and they forget about the academic side that is required. That sometimes they don't push for that. And why is that? Let me first ask, why is that happening, and what are you doing to correct that, or what's your approach?
Yeah. So, our approach is to inform, to
Right.
inform. Oftentimes, parents are simply looking for the best options and opportunities for their kids.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, in the world of sports, especially competitive sports, once that
Right.
element is kind of infused and it's beyond just physical participation or just trying to get kids aware and of different
Right.
sports and things of that nature.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, what happens is once the competitive element is infused, you
Right.
now have a barrage of information, right? And so
Right.
families tend to look at participation with the end result in mind, meaning I'm
Right.
looking at LeBron James and then
Right.
building reverse engineering from that standpoint, or I'm looking at Patrick Mahomes and then
Right.
reverse engineering the process from that standpoint. So we try to educate our families early
Hmm.
because early intervention is best. And we
Right.
really explain to them, hey, this process should be about using sports and not letting sports use your child or yourself.
Right. Right.
So we go through information sessions where we talk about, how to align if you have athletic ability, how to
Mhm.
use that opportunity in terms of scholarships or
Right.
admissions to high schools. How do you
Right.
use that and make sure that you're setting up your kid for future success and not just athletic success?
Right. I mean, I love that idea because I think few parents, it's not, I don't think it's always the parents' fault. The parents don't know. But the best thing they can do is find a program like yours or reach out to someone like you that talks to the parents and puts that information in their hands. That parents understand that if your child is gifted, the best thing they can do by investing in their child is making sure that you invest in the gift, but the gift gives the child the return on that investment. And that is the scholarship, but the scholarship is just a pass through that ends up becoming a degree, some qualifications. The other thing I want to say is that I did my live yesterday, and I talked about the importance of having skill set. A degree doesn't always, a degree is an outcome. A degree doesn't guarantee a job. And most college students now think that the degrees they choose, they never research what those degrees actually pay, and everyone assumes that 100K is what your job's going to, what the degree is going to equate to a job or a profession, and it doesn't most of the time. So where do you all concentrate degrees at? And thank you for the people jumping on right now. Where do you all say that the degrees you should concentrate in for future student athletes to professions that will lead them to upward mobility, like we spoke about before?
Yeah, Phil, that's a great point.
Mhm.
We traditionally the route with athletics, and especially as you go from high school to college, it's
Mhm.
just purely based on the sport. So,
Right.
traditionally, what will happen is that you have a young man, let's say he gets a football scholarship, he goes off to school.
Mhm.
The university is going to view you just as the asset from a sports standpoint. So they're going to
Right.
promote the idea of taking majors such as liberal arts,
Mm.
philosophy. And this
Right.
is not an attack on that, but it doesn't create a true hard skill. And the reason
Right.
why they're choosing that is so that you make sure that your daily schedule is built around practice time. So,
Ah,
unfortunately, you'll have, as we spoke, someone like yourself who had a nursing background. Well, biology 101 or anatomy lab is at 12 o'clock. But from a
right.
coaching standpoint, hey, I need you at practice from 12 to 3. So now we have a conflict, and,
Mhm.
and, and traditionally what happens is that they'll say, hey, maybe move away from the, medicine side or engineering, finance, take liberal arts, which will give you a more fluid schedule. But
Right.
unfortunately, 4 years pass and you graduate and you have no real skill. And now you're competing globally, right?
Right.
We are in that stage where our college graduates are not just competing with folks nationally, you're competing globally. And so it puts you at an extreme disadvantage. And
Right.
ultimately, you have that remorse. And that's the sort of end side that we see is oftentimes where families feel as though, at the last moment, yeah, we were kind of used by this athletic system, so to speak.
Right. I think I think what I'm trying to do, folks, if you understand what the purpose of me having specific guests on my broadcast is, that these are people that I know, have interacted with. This is not someone I don't have a personal relationship with, but you have to understand that the knowledge that you have or lack is what leads to the outcomes that you get in life. It is not necessarily institutional forces that are, giving you a disadvantage. Someone like Mr. Coombs here, Alex, he has created a window of opportunity, a window of information that allows you to access and understand, like, this is the way the game's being played. Here's how you play the game to win for yourself. Here's where you need an education. The liberal arts is where they push you into, because it's for their schedule. Well, you go to school to get a degree for your life. It's your schedule that they need to work around, not you have to work around their schedule. And that's something I think that parents or sometimes students may be afraid to push back on. But after the 4 years, they're done with you. You're an asset that has a 4 year lifespan. If you get redshirted the first year, and then after that, they're bringing in the next recruit, the person to take your place. There's no loyalty in the scholarship. The loyalty should be to yourself and your outcomes always. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And if I could just touch on that, Phil,
Hmm.
there's actually no such thing as a 4-year scholarship. So this
Wow.
is one of the biggest misconceptions. So when you
Ooh.
attend a university, it is, yes, there's 4 years of eligibility that you have in a 5-year calendar, but
Right.
your scholarship is a year-to-year contract, which
Okay.
can be deleted at the discretion of the staff. So let's say, hey,
Got it.
we find another fast kid who plays receiver. You know what? That we're going to replace you, and you're going to now have to go through that route of transferring. So
Mhm.
that's one of the biggest, myths of college sports, so to speak.
Right.
There's no such thing as a 4-year scholarship. So it's in your best interest to make sure that you're completely owning this process. Do not
Mhm.
rely on the system. Do not rely from a coaching standpoint, because they're going to view it as, hey, we're providing you scholarship money,
Right.
right? And that's how they kind of, you know, join in the conversation and in the relationship. So, they're viewing it from the school's perspective. You have to view it from a family perspective, a self perspective, in order to make sure that you're not left out.
Right. I just to piggyback again on that, is what was your line? You said that the purpose of it is to use school, not use I'll let you say it so that way people can understand your mantra.
Yeah, our mantra is use sports, do not let sports use you. And
Right.
oftentimes, this is not the case. Even today, you would think this was a strong sort of idea back in the day, that especially with basketball, you would
Mm,
see, and I hate to use guys' names, but someone like Charles Barkley, who purely went to school for basketball and knew
mhm.
he was a first round pick. And so school
Right.
wasn't really a serious thing, but
Right.
he had that 1% advantage. Now, everyone is
Right.
not Charles Barkley. So
Right.
unfortunately, the statistics don't play in favor of the student athlete.
Right. I mean, and a case like Avon, his case, he made it to the league, made it on the practice squad, ended up getting bumped up to actual playing time, and then due to an injury, so it was just that window of opportunity was there, and he was talking about it. And salute to Avon for being able to share that about past missed opportunities where there were investments he could have made, and he played for the Detroit Lions. There were investments he could have made in Detroit with real estate. There were opportunities presented to him. Some of the coaches were telling him about stocks and some of these financial advantages he could take advantage of, but he wasn't prepared on the front end moving into that direction. So when the money came, he wasn't able to take advantage of opportunity because the knowledge was not there. And one of the things that I think is that when you're choosing degrees to go back on, what degrees are you seeing now that our parents and young listeners should be aiming for, that are that they don't guarantee the best outcome, but it gives them the ability to get jobs that are going to start them off with a running start economically.
Absolutely. And we break this down in tiers. So if you're a tier
Mm,
one, or the likelihood that you're a 1%
right.
gifted athlete, meaning you're going to have a pro shot. If
Got it.
we tend to kind of tell those athletes, hey, listen, get into a background of finance so you
Mm,
understand the mechanics of money.
mm,
And because you're going to come into money, hey, what do you do once you receive $1 million contract? How do you
right.
understand tax structure? How do you understand investment opportunities, savings? So we
Right.
tend to tell those athletes to look into those sort of things, marketing, because now you're your own asset. So how do
Right.
you, as a personal brand, how do you market yourself to attract opportunities? Our tier two and tier three, we speak to those kids from the standpoint of get a real skill, right? So
Mm,
engineering backgrounds and all engineering, right? Chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, because these are the
mm,
jobs of the future. These are the jobs that also provide the most fluidity, right? So you
right.
can work at a financial firm if you have a engineering background, because the obviously the rigor that it takes
Right.
to go through that major lends itself to multiple fields. Then we'll go down and the STEM fields we push. And then, depending on where the kid is
Mhm,
academically, we'll talk to them about education,
right.
looking at the lane of becoming a future educator. But that's how we make sure that our young people have the ability and flexibility to actually own their future.
When you talk to the younger children, because I've talked before about feeling that there's this big disconnect with adults and teenagers and even younger, the younger generation. I guess that's what Gen Y, and what is that, Gen Alpha. I'm gonna get really specifics on all these generational names, but when you're talking to what are the up and coming younger teens, early teens to late teens, they're going to be in a decade, they're going to be moving into their 20s or so, early 20s. What do you see in their eyes that is the fantasy that they're buying into, from the media, as far as in the reality of their life and where they're headed? And what things do you do to try to bring them down to earth and set them on a path that's towards true success?
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of go in reverse with that. So how do we early intervention,
Yeah.
what we do, and you opened up with the idea of financial literacy. So
Right.
we try to develop a curriculum where, as young as elementary, we inform kids, and this is
Right.
historically what other communities have done. They have this naturally,
Right. Affluent
but
communities. Absolutely.
historically, inner city black and brown communities, we don't necessarily have this as this isn't culturally dominant. So
Right.
we try to bring it down to the youngest level, with the families there, of course, and inform them on financial literacy, understanding
Right.
long-term savings,
Right.
what's an IRA, what's a 401k. Because if
Right.
you're built with this and equipped with this, you're going to now view how
Mhm.
important academics is going to lead to your future opportunity. And oftentimes, what we see, and this is why I said we go in reverse, when we
Right.
inform our young people and we speak to them truthfully,
Mhm.
that sensationalism around becoming a professional athlete, you see it
Right.
begin to dwindle.
Right.
Our athletes to view it from that standpoint, where, oh, coach, I'm in this, I'm going to the NFL, I'm going to the NBA, it's because you're not informed. Less than
Right.
1% of athletes in collegiate sports move on. And then from that statistic, less than 1% actually stay past 3 years. So
Mhm.
this idea of becoming a professional athlete is almost comparable to winning the lottery. And now
Right.
none of us will bank our future on lotto tickets. So let's
Right.
not do
Right.
it in terms of sport. And so that's our way to combat this issue. But Phil, the issue of social media has now kind of exasperated this sort of issue, because
Mhm.
everyone sees the highlight reels, right? Social media is a
Right.
highlight reel, and
Right.
they're just putting that out. So our young people tend to view, Odell Beckham. I'm going to become Odell Beckham. I'm going to
Right.
become Mia Hamm, and it's
Right.
now that's not the case.
One of the things that I see constantly, and again, I want to thank you for what you all are doing there in educating. Maybe I'll ask this question to be a little contrarian, and I hope you don't feel any kind of way about this. But I'm sure some listeners, some parents, you may have gotten this sometimes, is that they feel that you're shooting down their kid's dream. With the NFL, NBA, the child is very gifted. It may be in your eyes not to the pro level yet, but how do you navigate that conversation with the parent who sees their kid as my child is super gifted? Like in Avon's case, I'm going to bring him up because I'm going to speak to someone I knew in my life that everyone just knew he was going to make it, and I in my mind, I thought first, a draft pick, and even though he was Big East All Conference, he was broke records. He has records that can't be broken. He still didn't get into the league as a draft. He got in as a free agent, so it's
Mhm.
the expectation wasn't there. He also suffered some I think MCL injuries that kind of that's the life of an athlete, and people don't think about that. They don't think about even an injury. My senior year, I track season. Just I tore my hamstring in track season. This is April of my senior year, as I'm kind of still scouting out potential colleges in a track meet. Ended up going to Wagner, as you know, dual scholarship at track and football. But I lost many scholarships just because I tore a hamstring. And I'll tell you this: I ran the race and I came in second, even with the torn hamstring. That's how far out in front I was, and on a
Mhm.
gravel track, no less. And parents may have their all in invested in the idealism of my son's going to be the next Steph Curry. He's going to be the next LeBron. He's going to be a Dion. Um, how do you kind of sit down and talk to the parents? Because I know parents, we want to believe in our children, but how do you got to go and tell them what is like, kind of, I think the parents feel like you just told them, yeah, cancer. It's like bad news. How do you guys deal with that? And how do you talk to the children to make sure that, they're not defeated by that news?
Now, Phil, this is the hardest part of this line of work.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
not going to sugarcoat how difficult some of those conversations are because everyone views their child as the center of the universe.
Right.
But I'm very much unapologetically our community, our people. So I'm going to have the uncomfortable conversation, and the way these conversations kind of start is one, first and foremost, genetics. We
Mm,
can't it can't go without saying. If I'm, I'm 6'3",
right.
my brother who played with you, 6'3", our
Yeah.
father, 6'2". So no
Yep.
surprise, we're all 6-footers.
Right.
If you're saying you're going to go to Alabama and both mom and dad are under 6 feet,
Right.
you know, in your case, you're fast. I can
Yeah.
assure you, one of your parents were very fast. It's
Yeah.
it's
Both of
it's
them
not a
actually.
mistake. Okay,
Yeah.
so yes, are there anomalies? Yes, but you cannot bank your future on anomalies. So we first speak to that true fact, and that's genetics plays a tremendous role. Secondly,
Mhm.
resources. Will you have the ability to see all of those genetic outcomes? Because yes, you can be a 6-footer, but if you're not adequately trained, have the proper nutrition, attend the
Right.
proper schools so that you get
Mm,
maximum exposure.
right.
Um, this all plays a role. So we kind of speak to them from that standpoint. And then the
Right.
last is that we provide the data, right? Don't believe Coach Alex. Don't believe my partner George or Tim
Right.
Heckman. Don't believe us. Just look at the data. It's less than 1%, right? So
Right.
you're talking about over 1 million athletes on the collegiate level, and less than 1% of them are getting an opportunity.
Mhm.
Avon is a very near and dear to me because I also went to West Virginia, right? And I
Oh,
went during the Rich Rodriguez years where we had
right.
folks like Man Jones,
Mhm.
um, Steve Slayton, right? So, but what people don't understand, there was 152 guys on the team. And
Wow.
of the 152, only two had a opportunity.
Wow.
So, would you bank your future? And this is where you bring the analogies.
Mhm.
If we were strictly speaking on a financial level, would you bank yourself on those sort of data points? No, absolutely not. You wouldn't make investments. That would kind of sound like gambling. And
Right.
and that's how, once we speak to the parents on that level and they realize, listen, we truly care. If your son has an opportunity past college, I mean, God bless him. But let's speak to this and let's make sure that we're not repeating a cycle that has impacted student athletes for 100 years.
Right. And I always go back to the financial component and say this is the question I think and I mean I don't want to say if I was in your shoes, but it's again, if you're even if your child were to go to the 1%, and do they still know how to build themselves as a business brand? You know, that and this I'm actually advocating your point because let's say you are going to make it to the league. You know, can you read a contract that your agent is your are you putting your future in more hands than it should be instead of taking control of your future? And you have an agent, an accountant, you don't know how to sign, good contracts. Lord knows we've seen so many rappers, musicians that have tons of stories of signing bad contracts. Allegedly, I mean, to name a few, like, lots have had issues with Katrina about it. They talked about TLC with their contracts. There's enough information out there to talk about people who don't have the educational background because they have all athletic forward and they end up going to the league and they suffer the consequences for that lack of literacy. And it's not just I need to understand how a bank works. It's I don't understand how to operate as a business because even then you are still operating as a business. One of the things you said, like with Charles Barkley, but he managed to get himself in other places where he could brand himself out and be an authority or a talking figure that his money can still go on. Because how many athletes are they the $1 million stops once you stop running the football, the $1 million it's not coming in the same way. You know what I mean? And that's something that I love what you all are doing. The one area I'm going to touch in on is something that maybe people are not considering is that the relationships that athletes have with partners, and this is the area where I wanted to talk about preparing for success, is that as an athlete, you're a target. As a success, even when you're an athlete in college or going to college, even going to the pros, you are a target for people who are looking to latch on to your success. That's an area that I don't think athletes or people who are successful understand very much, that there are people who are going places and there are people who want to go along for the ride. Do you all talk to your athletes, to your students about even if you are smart? I mean, Stephen Hawking, God rest his soul, this man was in a wheelchair and everything. He was married. There are women who are attracted to a man who can't even walk and he's successful. So, and I don't want to just say women are, men, but it's like, how do you teach them how to avoid people who will take advantage of their success rather than enhance their success?
Yeah, Phil, that's a excellent point, and it's something that we absolutely touch on. Those
Let
are
me
the
get
that's the
your
mentor.
let me get my air horse for my question right there.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah,
Go ahead.
absolutely.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
That's the mentorship aspect of our program where we
Okay.
have those real conversations. Because
Hmm.
oftentimes what happens in traditional settings and nonprofits is that you tend to avoid that because for many
Hmm.
reasons. One, a lack of information, a fear of where that conversation goes. But for us, we absolutely have to have that conversation, especially as men of color, something
Right.
that we've seen. Just that it's funny that you brought that up. I don't know if you saw in the last 2 days the two young men who were found not guilty who attended Ohio State University.
Yes.
They lost out on millions of dollars because they were potential NFL prospects, and because
Right.
of a lack of understanding of how to conduct yourself in a university setting, how to understand that as a collegiate athlete, especially at a Power Five school such as Ohio State,
Hmm.
you have a target, you're a celebrity.
Right.
And so you find you need to understand how to equip yourself for certain
Right.
situations. As an athlete, how do you deal with party settings in your college career? Make sure
Right.
you understand that when you're engaging either with a young lady or a young man, make sure
Right.
that you understand in totality what the implications are in any sort of activity.
Right. Right.
Understanding
Exactly.
your name, image, and likeness, right? Now you have this
Yep.
NIL movement in collegiate athletics, understanding that you're a brand and posting
Right.
things on social media in a bad light, how that can potentially scare people away from getting involved in any sort of capacity.
Right.
So it's something that we inform them. We hold a social media class to understand appropriate behavior. And listen, we're not telling kids to, or anyone, how to live your life, but
Right.
let's not play ignorant. You need to
Right.
understand, as you said, this is a game, and you have to
Right.
understand the game. You have to
Right.
understand the game.
Yeah, just as much as you have an on-field game, you have an off-field game that you have to play too as well. There are many hats and many faces that you have to face, and it doesn't matter how big or small. Success exists in all pockets, all levels of life. So you're not immune from the trials and tribulations of success at every level in your own neighborhood. I wanted to ask too as well because I think again relationships with athletes, you know, you're going to go be successful. You're going to have a career. You're going to be successful. You're going to have an NFL professional career, or you're going to have a business. What is the importance of understanding things like a marriage? You're going to, because a lot of times we see with athletes is that they have these huge successes, like with Tom Brady, and then they have these huge divorces that I mean, Tom Brady may be more of an extreme, but even he is not immune from a broken household and that aspect. And people might think it's just them. But again, even at lower levels, and folks, I'm going to bring you some statistics behind why I'm talking about what I'm talking about, because it's all going to hit and what we're talking about preparing children, athletes, because not every athlete is going they will end up having a profession. They have to understand the finances of success and how to be successful. There's a great thing of getting $1 million, but how do you maintain and grow $1 million? How do you grow success keeping forward? And part of that is understanding life. Our relationships break down constantly because we're not taught things about how to be successful in a relationship. I'm gonna give you guys a little bit. Like my wife and I, we talked this morning. We have a newborn baby, we have an 8, 6-year-old. We come from different backgrounds, being in an interracial relationship where I have a black experience and she comes from a Northern California, Caucasian experience. So we have different motivational factors, and a lot of times they do clash. And I told her today, I said, listen, with these numbers and statistics that we're talking about, can we try to just make the marriage work? Because I think people think that marriage is the upfront love. And what it is really is we've been together 10 years. It's at this point, there's more that I find about you that I don't like, that I never saw before up front. And I told her, I said, man, at worst, we got to make this together because we got to survive in the world. The taking out and the dating and stuff. We got it. We got the pretty house, but your toilet is broken. Now you got to do the maintenance. We had the love, but now we got to maintain furtherness in life. And you have to do that when you get into all these different type of relationships in life, whatever they may be. And I'm asking, is that a concern or something that you even feel parents should be talking about with their kids as they go through? Because we see divorces are so high. We see relationships, dating is so hard now. And again, is anyone telling them, like you said, the highlight reel, the TikTok highlight reel, the social media highlight reel? Are we teaching them what real life is about? That it's hard, it's difficult. You know what I mean? I'm gonna get older. I'm bald. You know what I mean? Like I've got grays in my hair. Some days I fart. Some days my armpits stink. Can you love me through that time? Can you love me when I'm at my worst, even though you met me and I presented my best? And that's what's going to happen as you progress through in life. And we're so easily ready to drop people at a nick of at a drop of a dime. But economically, most of us are not going to be separating with millions and millions of dollars with nannies and trainers. And I don't have a trainer. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. Help me out here.
No, no, wow, that we absolutely attack that issue, and we do it two ways. Obviously through
Mhm.
conversation, but
Right.
also through just viewing, right? So a part of
Mhm.
historically our communities is that you don't see men of color in positions of leadership, right? So
Right.
we try to penetrate that and explain
Mhm.
the implications of that. The second point, you talk about marriage. For
Right.
most inner city kids, black or white, but in particular black and Latino, you don't see two-parent households, and the statistics on success rates based on that, right?
Right.
So we tend to attack every issue. Some things happen organically, but absolutely in our mentorship sessions, we speak to our young men and our young women about these issues that impact our communities, and for our young men, how to view women of color in a respectful light, what
Right.
the implications are of marriage, how
Mhm.
important that is, how it impacts your children, your
Right.
grandchildren, future generations, and ultimately, if you see that top word, how that impacts community, right?
Mm.
Communities that are successful tend to
Right.
have these same things in place, right?
Right.
Education is
Right.
a priority. Two-parent
Mhm.
household is a priority.
Right.
Things of this nature are what exactly lead to upward mobility. And unless we're having those real conversations, we're not
Right.
really making an impact. All we're doing is continuing this endless conversation, this circular conversation
Right.
that leads to nowhere.
Yeah, and I mean, again, you might have been hearing some of younger YouTubers, your younger athletes, student athletes. They think that the solution is to leave the country and go find a woman from a different culture that may be more submissive, and I'm saying, okay, yeah, that may be one fact that's there, but again, how are you able to maintain and be successful? Because I have 3 children. you know Paying for children to be successful is super expensive, and not only that, you have to teach your children knowledge. Like my wife, I told her, I was like, hey, we got to start letting the kids put the clothes in the washing machine, take them out, put them in the dryer. You got to let the kids fold the clothes. They can fold clothes very well, but you even got to let them make mistakes, because
Yes.
and my daughter's 8, in 10 years she's going out the door, and whatever we miss, the life is going to punish, and the younger kids, what they don't understand about getting older is that more responsibility comes your way, and when you bring in another person and you start to share ideas. Your brother said this, Don Coombs said this the other when I spoke to him in an interview last week. He said that when he went and did life insurance with a married couple, he would ask them how much they thought they needed, and if anything ever happened to one another, and they always came up with 2 different numbers, and it would be they needed to have a conversation, because it was like, what do I need if this person is not here in my life afterwards? And that's these conversations don't happen at the dating level. They don't happen at the entry level of a business relationship. The conversations about who we are, what our goals, what our motivations are, and can we work together? What are your expectations? How do you deal with these things? No one wants to ask them when they're dating, because we're just trying to present the best us instead of qualifying people that are going to be good for us long term. Because my wife and I, we may hold hands sometimes, we may kiss other times, but I'm saying, hey man, are we when my wife is in trouble, and she had almost an accident scare, a teenager pulled out in front of her, she had stopped on her brakes, but when she called me out of fear, and I was there. That's the stuff that matters. Past the IG booty shots, past the IG highlight clips, and people posing together. It's those down bad times that's what you're supposed to be there for. And I'm just wondering, are people being educated on that when they're in relationships? Are they asking these questions?
No, no, it's something that, and as I said, and in particular in certain communities, but it affects everyone,
Yeah,
obviously. But
it
these are
does.
conversations. I am a product of, I married early, high school sweetheart, divorced
Right.
early,
Oh man.
and one of the things that having those sort of conversations, there's
Mhm.
something I didn't want to repeat a cycle
Right.
that impacts men of color. Um, so my ex-wife is my best friend. The minute we understood, hey, listen, we got married a little too early. We didn't really explore life, and in all
Right.
fairness, I knew exactly what I wanted to do, but it required
Mm.
me to work, running a nonprofit, being an entrepreneur, a co-founder, a business leader, community leader, that's 80 hours a week. And anyone who tells you
Yep.
they're going to go into this line of work, it's one of the reasons why entrepreneurs have the highest rates of divorce. It's a
Right.
lot of hours. You're not seeing your significant other. And that was a conversation in our mediation. Hey, listen, yeah, I was a terrible person from that standpoint. She says it best. You're an awesome man. You work with young people. You want to build a community, but I never see you. And
Wow.
so that hit me. Oh, wow, you're absolutely right. I'm not there for that person. And so when my son, I said, absolutely not. You're going to see your father and mother, even though we have dealt with a real life situation in divorce, you're going to see
Right.
mom and dad in a healthy light. And it's a conversation that people just avoid.
Yeah.
Folks don't, there's not a pathway. Our elders haven't let a framework to say, hey,
Right.
listen, once this happens, how do I troubleshoot?
Right.
What's the
Right.
next step? What's the
Yeah.
best way? And so I was very proactive in, listening to some of the men that, influenced my life. Hey, listen, I'm going through this. What are the
Right.
best things? And it's always the same sort of, you know, rules, open communication,
Mm.
honesty, long-term planning. And
Mm.
you begin to realize just how important that is.
I find that what I find is that what's being shown on the TV is the destructiveness. It's always from an angle that black men are not this, not that. And when I meet in my daily life, you're in New York, I see people from different walks of life. I feel
Mhm.
I'm going to say is that I don't agree with that statement. I believe that divorces and tough relationships are happening all over, even for entrepreneurs. People who are working and striving towards a better life have the same. How many nurses I know, women that work overtime, they work 21 days in a row. Even for the woman side, there's the same argument happening for them because everyone's struggling to survive. I said this in my live stream yesterday is that we're as an education, as a society, we're taught to survive. We go to a job, we trade our hours for dollars, we trade our time for money, and it's not enough. Because again, athletes get paid millions of dollars, but people who save lives get paid less than 100,000. People that when a global pandemic happens, you need these people when everything shuts down, but those people are paid the least, and someone that can simply just dunk a ball is paid more. And that's a clear indication of where the values are on the economics of society. But again, we all have to work, we all have to support our families. And another part of it is that athletes going in there, you want to have children, and a lot of times we have children out of love and lust, but we don't have children with the economic understanding of what the cost and time demand is of raising an actual family. For instance, I'm going to tell everybody I have a newborn. My son Percival is 5 months old. Well, guess what, guys? You're going to have to understand when you have a 5-month-old child, she ain't going to be in the mood every day. You could be waiting a while until anytime if she looks at you and gives you a kiss, a wink, or anything else like that. But this, men go their own ways. There's an avenue for it. But again, I think that is anyone telling men that, hey, man, she's breastfeeding. Her mind switches to motherism. You're still a man with man demands, but she's still a mom. You have to understand that is going to happen. That she's not going to be there. That's a conversation. It can't be a demand that, hey, I still need this. You have to understand that there's physiological changes going on, that she is now bonded and connected with the baby, and she ain't thinking about what you got going on downstairs. And at the same time, how do men explain that or understand that when they're going into wanting and having a family? And also the fact that at the end of the day, a woman is breastfeeding a baby. She's tending to the baby all day. The baby's latched to her. And when you come home from work, she says, here, take the baby. You still got to be a parent in the day. And now you're fighting over, you just been working all day. I've been doing this, but the rules were never discussed at the time when you started to have a relationship. especially if she wanted to be a career woman who's saying that in 2, 3 weeks, I'm going to get back out to that job. And you're like, well, what do we do about daycare? I don't want to send to daycare. So the conversations, the tough conversations I never had. I'm going to give everybody how I had this conversation with my wife. I'm 7 years older than my wife. My wife was at the time of our relationship was going to school to get her associates. She was moving on to getting her bachelor's, and she wanted to, in her family, get her degree. She wanted to be the first one in her nuclear family to graduate college with a bachelor's degree. Heck, even graduating high school with a GED was her thing. No, I didn't get a bottom shelf Becky. I got someone that I qualified for, that I knew wanted more out of her life, that had the drive and determination from there. I didn't pick a bottom low level Caucasian girl. I had a conversation with her about someone who had been through things, been through struggle, and knew how to get through the hard times in life. And that's what said, okay, maybe we need to look a little bit further. When it came times that biologically I wanted children, I said to her, she said, well, I don't want to have kids because I feel like I'm not going to be able to accomplish my degree. And I told her, I said, listen, I want to have a family. If you don't want to have a family, that's fine. But we have to understand that we cannot be together if you don't want to have a family with me. But I'm willing to have a family with you and help you in any way that I can to get that degree. And we did it. We did it while having not one, but 2 children by that time. And that meant that sometimes I would work overtime, overnights. I work a double shift. And in the morning, I still had to watch my daughter till 12 and be halfway passed out trying to do that. But we were in it together. We understood what we both were trying to accomplish. And that's something I think is missing from these young athletes, that they own, women and men, because women are finding men that they don't really qualify for them. You know what I mean? Like you have a daughter, correct?
Yes.
And it's like I have a daughter too. And it's like, again, I know he might look good. He might have, a whole lot of this. He might be a thug or whatever else, but does he qualify for what you're looking for in life? Can you speak to that a little bit? I'm charged, man. I'm charged. Let me just myself a shout out here. I'm charged. And I'm glad because you get to see the students who have gifts and talents, but how do you talk to them about that? Because they're single parents, single dads, single moms walking around here thinking that what they see on TV talking about, there's problems in the Black and brown communities with men and women being together. And it's like, okay, but is anyone telling us there's a list of questions you need to ask when you meet this person? And you need to start talking about that. You need to talk about what are your economic goals? What are your financial outcomes that you're looking to make? Who's going to make what? Do you want to stay home and raise our children, or do you want to have a career? We don't need to have 3 kids if you're going to have that lifestyle, because we're not going to be able to afford it. No one's sitting down and doing any math. Everybody's just come. Go ahead. I'm gonna let you go ahead in here because I'm gonna go back on that. You can see I'm about to tie up and get a suit on and become Martin real quick because I'm about to go to the preacher's pulp on people. But go ahead, please talk about that, because I think that's missing from the conversation with our young people. We're talking about, girl, leave them. I'm on my own. I could do that, and it's again when I talk, and I'm gonna give it back to you. When I talk to my wife, what changed her mindset is when I told her, what happens when you have a woman that treats our son that way? And then everything started changing. When I told her, look at your son, are you saying what you feel now that you either perceive with me or the problems we have? Are you going to be okay with someone doing that to your son? Or are you going to be okay with the woman who doesn't want to work and do the work that I'm doing to provide for us? What happens if our daughter gets stuck with a guy like that? But again, we got to train them to be able to qualify people for that, to filter out. There's got to be some people that we really want, but you ain't made the cut. You know what I mean? So, and I mean, because now I'm talking to you as a parent, because you're talking to other children, but we got to also walk the walk in life and say this too as well.
No, absolutely, and that. The reality is if you view yourself as a community leader, advocate, or any position of authority, I think you have a social responsibility to inform people. So, when we speak to our athletes, I truly view all of our student athletes as family. I view I'm just an extension. I'm a dad, an uncle, however they need to view me. I'm going to speak to them on that level. And so I think something that you you're touching on is we're just not having a conversation. You, Phil, are providing the solution. You're
Right.
having the conversation. The problem is
Right.
that we sensationalize division, right? So there's no conversations from a solution-based perspective, right? So two men of
Right.
color over here having real
Perfect.
conversations, right? Like
Right.
I don't
Right.
shy away from the fact that, hey, I'm the president of a youth football organization. I have all these boys, yet there's 80% mother participation and 20% father participation. What's going on with that? You know, we got
Right.
to have real conversations. If you're having babies out here, make sure you're taking care of your children, right?
Right.
I get it. You can have differences with mom, your
Mhm.
ex-wife, ex, whatever the situation is. That does not delete the fact that you have an obligation to raise your child. And that's
Right.
something in our community and all communities, especially that are led, male centric, we
Right.
tend to shy away from that and pretend as if that's not an issue. So first and foremost, you are attacking this issue head on, Phil, by just having the conversation. The second thing is providing the statistics that show, hey, listen, if you're not having these conversations in open communication about, hey, the dynamics of getting in a relationship and the
Mhm.
implications of things working or not working,
Right.
what's the roadmap? What's the
Right.
roadmap? How do we get to these points? And when we reach certain points, how do you pivot? How do you operate? And how do you make sure that it has a positive net effect and not a net, just purely a catastrophe? So
Yeah.
it's us really, it's our obligation, our generation in particular, because we're not too far off in age, but our
Right.
generation in particular needs to take the mantle and start informing our communities
Right.
of what's going on. And then from a male perspective, having, this idea of alpha male, what does that really mean? Right?
Right.
Alpha male is not just conquering women and making a
Right.
ton of money and having 30
Right.
cars and amassing, wealth. That's not what an alpha is.
Right.
In fact, if you have to describe what an alpha is, like Deion
Right.
Sanders says, that means that's not
Yep.
you, right?
Right.
Like I don't got
Right.
to tell you who I am. I know who I am. I'm a leader in my
Right.
community. My people will tell you that. I don't
Right.
need to say that, right? You're Phil Davis. You're the leader of your household. You're the leader
Right.
of Ancestry Lands. It's understood. So
Right.
I think we need to make sure we take that narrative back, but do it in a very unapologetically masculine way, right? And masculine
Right.
doesn't necessarily mean negative. We
Right.
need to break those sort of things. I can be a masculine male and be the leader of my home and you
Right.
know have that sort of structure and what that
Mhm.
means, but also speak to the feminine experience. What does it
Right.
mean to be a woman and how do we connect? And no one speaks to those parts, man. So I love what you're doing in terms of having the uncomfortable conversation,
Yeah.
speaking freely. And then the most important part, and this is a passion of mine, I
Mhm.
take more of the proactive approach. Yes, I believe in rallies. I believe in pumping our fists and doing all of that, man. But we got to
Right.
be solution based. It can't
Right.
just be that aspect. What's next? How do we
Right.
fix our problems?
Right.
Give our parents, our student athletes, our communities an actual game plan. And
Right.
and that I have yet to see at scale. Absolutely,
Mm.
there are community leaders that have been promoting this, but it's once again, it's never brought to the forefront. What's
Right.
brought to the forefront is the negativity, all
Yeah.
of the divisiveness. No,
Yeah.
how do we connect it? There are, how do we speak to communities such as, Prince George County, where
Mhm.
you have Black lawyers and doctors, right?
Right.
Those communities exist.
Yeah.
Black Wall Street. What was
Yeah.
Black Wall Street? How did those communities exist?
Yeah.
Atlanta. I'm from Harlem. Harlem is a beacon of Black and brown excellence. I'm going to speak to the excellence. Yes, I'm
Mhm.
going to speak about all of the injustices, all of the negativity, but I'm also going to speak from a position of strength about our leaders such as Malcolm and
Right.
how he introduced the idea of having your own schools,
Mhm.
making sure you take control over your health,
Right.
understanding law, understanding community politics, local
Right.
politics, and how that impacts not just our wallets, but our relationships with our wives, our
Right.
husbands, and the like.
One of the things that, I really, I appreciate you saying that and understanding, the way I spit things. One of the things that I get tired of is that we always have more excuses than, like you said, coming up with solutions. I'm looking in your background there, and I'm talking about leadership development. The one thing that I always say about the whole, alpha component is that leaders put in the work. They show their work. I told my wife once before, she said, I know everybody talks about 50-50 and really it's 100 and 100, but I told her, I said, when we first met, I said, our relationship is 51-49 because she said 50-50. And she said, why is that? And I said, the reason why is that 2%, they go work the doubles. The 2%, that 51, they go out there and do the hard part that's disgusting. When it comes to you got to give a little bit more, that 2%, that 51, that's your 2%. So that's what you got to do as the leader. In the case of lions, lion pride, male lion, everybody loves to use lions as a great example. But what does the male lion do? He hunts. Yes, female lions do that. But when the scrapping gets down, when it's 5-on-1, the females step back and the male lion goes to the forefront. That's what he does. Every male lion that owns a pride, even if it's 2 against 5, and it comes down to the death, that the lions step forward and they do that job. That was what I took from what it is to be a leader and an alpha in that aspect. Not this, I can have a piece of candy here. The real men build a full family, a full unit. The unit may be broken down, but still the woman should still have some level of acknowledgement. Like you said, is that, hey, you weren't there. These are failings, but your leadership, our relationship. And when I say leadership, it is not submission through control of a person, but it's through submission saying that, hey, no more than you go to work and you have a boss and they tell you what to do. You have a plan. My wife tells me all the time, well, I have an eye. And I tell her, don't give me ideas, give me plans. I'm willing to listen to any plan. Show me a process that's workable. My cousin CJ, he's talked to me about, things. He's like, hey man, I want my wife to be a real estate agent. All she needs to do is bring in one sale every 3 months. And that little bit will just be all that we save. That's a plan. Not, well, I'm going to go be a real estate agent. I'm going to sell some houses. That's not a plan. That's an idea. Our people need plans, not ideas, not talking points. And again, I said this in one of my live streams, is that as much as hip hop has covered the entire world, there are people in South Africa that know how to do every little bit of dance that we come up with, right? You got Drake over and wherever he's doing the blippy dance. We got more dances, but why don't we dominate in other areas? One of the biggest things holding us back is the lack of will to compete. Every time we see that we're one in a room of many, we feel like there's this inferiority that we fall back into where we need to be in a room full of plenty. I say, why can you not compete and dominate to bring in more people who can compete and dominate? One thing I love about Coach Prime, and maybe we could touch on that if you still have more time. Please let me know because I want to be respectful to your time. And thank you for the people who are watching now. We got 9-10 people in here. I had less than that before. And one thing I like about Coach Prime is he's taken a little bit from your model of the athletes need to come in. There's an expectation that they're giving their all. There's an expectation that they are going to dress a certain way. Their presentation needs to be a certain way. He don't care about color. He cares about productivity. He wants to see them compete to be the best. If it's white, brown, or anything else like that, you go back to Remember the Titans with Denzel Washington. He said the same thing. The color will not matter. Whoever gets the job and position, you will compete to win. And everybody loves a good old movie like that. But where's the practice to that? We need to stop. We need to be as much as we could have a rap song that dominates the airwaves. Why can we not dominate in Wall Street? Why can we not dominate? Why can't we dominate the Wall Street? Again, why can't we go in there and compete? Why is it that we have to be owned by large teams who have one owner, and we need to have an exception to a rule in order to qualify? That automatically puts us at a qualifier because every time we come in, we need a handicap. We need to be dominating as a society, as a group, as an economic group, because again, there's only a few people at the top that want to hold all the bags, and we complain about it, but we still put them in the power to control downstream of our lives. But in our daily lives as a group, we're not talking about competing and dominating. Okay, just like we can quarter more black quarterbacks now, but again, why can't we have dominating on engineers? Why is it we can't dominate in whatever we're doing, dominating in banking? Again, create our own. Why can't we just go dominate someone else's industry? And again, why can't we overcome hurdles that are there for women? The same women, the same thing women are complaining about the lack of opportunity that they're getting. Why is it we cannot, as a people, dominate in that aspect and stop making excuses and make solutions on that? And again, start at what you're doing. You get them down to the ground level. Can we go up a little bit on your screen to show the first part? Because I think these are some pillars to what every community needs. And you just want to talk about the community, leadership, development, discipline. And the last is accountability. That's what About You is about. And again, they leaving them to be accountable. Your relationships, you need to be accountable. A leader is accountable. Every person under the leader has to learn accountability. I'll let you go because I'm charged right now. I'm real charged. I'm super charged right now. And I love what you guys are doing because you're talking to young children, elementary school, just like I'm doing with my kids. We're talking about interest rates. What is interest? I'm going through purchases with them. I've got tons of video on Facebook, my own profile, showing my kids getting paid. What's this process of interest? What is interest? I go over and have discussions with them. You don't need to send them to college for them to learn the school of life, the game of life. Yeah, Alex, could you chime in on that one, man? I need a drink of water. I'm like $1 in here. I'm preaching, brother. I'm preaching, brother.
I'll take one as well. I mean, that was beautiful, Phil. I really appreciate you taking this conversation to this place because that's really the real mission of our program. Right. Our program is that we're providing solutions, and that's the only way to get out of our circumstances. And when I say things that traditionally impact our communities of men and women that look like you and I.
Right.
First thing is that, like you said, we need to have a solution-based conversation. We need to take accountability for why we're in certain scenarios and why do statistics impact, our people. And it's because we're not having real conversations, right? We From a sports standpoint, when you're in college, you have your season, and after your season, you have an exit meeting with your coach. And in that exit meeting, your coach tells you, hey, listen, this is what you need in order to start, become an all-conference guy, an all-American, a potentially pro player. So we understand that that's the mechanism that's necessary to be successful as an athlete. We need to apply that same thing to a life-to-life standpoint. And we're not having those conversations. The way we do it is we take it head on, right? Like my partners, both my partners are not men of color, right? Both of them are Caucasian. And the beauty of our relationship is that we have these open conversations freely and in front of our student athletes, right? Me as a man of color, hey, my partner, George, hey, listen, this is why this young man is behaving this way because his background is lending himself to this type of behavior. And if we don't correct it, we need to make sure, if we don't correct it, it's going to lead to poor outcomes. Also, I don't need you as a white man to have a white savior mentality. I need you to treat these young people like people. I could care less if you like, right? Come in here because you view them as your people as well. We just so happen to be, ethnically different. So it's having those general conversations. And, obviously I'm a mixed person, right? My dad, Jamaican man, Caribbean, my mother, a Puerto Rican woman, right? Light skin, you have those dynamics, light, dark. My father was a dark man. My mother, a light woman, those dynamics, the way in which I see it, and your children will go through it as mixed kids, Phil. We have a unique lens, and that lens allows us to see both sides of the story, right? Because you're usually not black enough, you're not white enough, but you're allowed to be in the conversation to hear the gym, so to speak, the gym talk.
Right.
right?
Right.
So when I see, the Black community, my community speak about, hey, systemic racism, these issues that
Hmm.
are impacting us. Well, hey, why is that happening, right?
Right.
If you're from the projects, why are you pissing in your elevator?
Mm.
Why is there shit on the floor?
Right.
Right? Why are you attacking your neighbor? Right?
Right.
Like, okay,
Right.
there might be a systemic issue here, but how is
Right.
that impacting you locally? Right? How is
Right.
that impacting your day-to-day behavior? Right?
Right.
And then on the other side, right, my partner being a white man, hey, listen, these problems just didn't pop out of the blue, right? There are
Right.
things that are put into place, right? Like my partner, he's older than me, but I had to inform him of redlining. Hey,
Right.
George, why would this community create a certain structure so that people can't attain land and
Hmm.
land or property, which
Right.
we know in America is one of the fastest and easiest way to attain generational wealth. So you
Hmm.
prevented an entire group of people from that access. Do you
Right.
understand why Harlem looks the way it does? Chicago
Right.
looks the way it does? There's no real hope. And when you
Right.
remove hope, yes, people are going to behave in a certain way, and that's regardless of color, right? I went
Mm.
to West Virginia. West Virginia is in the Appalachia region, which is one of the
Right.
poorest regions of white America. And they're impacted by the same sort of issues, right? That
Right.
ghetto and all of that. What do you think
Right.
is going down in Morgantown, West Virginia,
Mm.
Western Pennsylvania, right?
Right.
That's the same sort of outcomes as Chicago and New York
Right.
City. So I kind of remove myself from the gaslighting when it comes to these
Yeah.
conversations because all they want
Hmm.
to do is divide us. No, man,
Right.
let's state what the issue is. Let's have the uncomfortable conversation. And as citizens of the
Right.
planet, let's come
Right.
together and do the right thing, right? I don't want to see white kids experiencing things like, hey, hate yourself. No, I don't believe in that. I don't believe that you're inherently
Yeah.
evil, right?
Right.
But I need you to understand why people who look like me may have
Hmm.
reservations, fear, or anger. We need to have
Right.
that conversation, right?
Right.
But once we have that conversation, how do we work together? And that's what About You is. About You
Right.
is a culmination of different things. We have kids in our program who are billionaires. And then we
Mm.
have kids who are from the projects of Marcy, Brooklyn,
Right.
right? But we
Right.
bring them together and you begin to realize, man, we're more alike than we're different, right?
Right.
And so
Yep.
that's what we try to attack. But Phil, you're leading this, man. You're leading
Right.
this, using your platform to have these conversations.
Hmm.
That excites me because quite frankly, as long as I've done this, these sort of meetings are usually at community board meetings that I attend.
Right.
Small intimate dinners with community leaders where they're kind of
Right.
talking to, hey, how do we fix our community? But I really have it, and I'm pretty sure there are examples, right? There are a
Of
ton.
course.
But you are an everyday person. You are someone that is living the life and now has a medium to say, hey, listen, this is what's going on. And we're going to have the real
Right.
conversation and we're going to speak to it direct, right? And we
Hmm.
need men like
Right.
you, men like my brother. We're leading our families, we're leading our wives, and there's nothing
Right.
wrong with that, right?
Yep.
There's nothing inherently wrong with being the leader of your household. And there are examples where the woman's the leader of the household, right?
Right.
But how do we come together and how do we provide solutions and make sure that we're leaving a better life for our kids, our grandchildren.
Right.
We're losing sight that our kids are growing up and they're witnessing all of this, right? I think the bigger issue is not even black, white, poor, rich. It's
Hmm.
a lack of leadership in our country, in our world. There aren't
Right.
any leaders who are willing to kind of spearhead this and lead the solutions. It's more about, hey, I'm going to divide, and divide leads to sensationalism, and
Mhm.
sensationalism leads to clicks and likes.
Right. One of the reasons why, and I'm going to get into this next section to left in my relationship with my wife. She's had to do so much on her own that it was hard for her to understand. I come from the South, so I have a Southern kind of leadership structure, and I told her it is not oppression, it is not submission. It is I am the one out in front. I am a shield to all of my family. To anything that pennant comes at life, that I'm going to take that responsibility head on. My father said something I told your brother. He said, the house takes all pushes. If you're the house, you take all the pushes. You take everything that life throws at you and you shield your family from that. When you are your wife's shield, she is the warrior behind you that is able to now go on the attack. I told her is that sometimes when I'm away, she'll ask me, hey, what should I do? And I said, sometimes when I'm not there, you have to make an executive decision. The vice president and president, Kamala Harris, everybody loves the Kamala Harris is in there. Salute to Kamala Harris if that's what you about. But again, he relies on her to make decisions and do things that are outside of his power or his ability. I don't always have the best presentation. My wife has a softness that I bring forward to deal with situations where my hardness would break something. You know what I mean? And she can do it in a way that complements who I am as a man. And I do things to complement at things that she does as a woman. But again, these are conversations we had up front. And again, it doesn't mean my marriage is perfect. It doesn't mean there are not times where I have not slept on the couch or she has slept on the couch because she just wanted to get away from me. It wasn't I made her that. She was just like, I can't deal with you. And we've had to sit down and talk about it. And in 10 years, we always go back to what was our original mission. And I always tell her is that we're getting older. We have a responsibility to talk to the younger generation. And I've said this about with one of my nephews. Shout out to my nephew, Kevin. I talked to him before because my business, he said, oh, I got a girl, this girl I like, she got a big old booty and all of this stuff. And I want to bring her to you, do some graphic design. And I told him, I said, nephew, do you like her booty or is she that good for my business? Don't use me to get an outcome. Bring me someone of quality because afterwards, once you're done, you're leaving me with the problem. You don't need me to validate who you are. That should be within yourself. And I'm not saying that to disparage him or anything like that, but my message to him was that you never need my shine to make you shine. You should shine and be able to do that. You don't need a trick to get a woman. You are the prize, and you should be able to talk with her and see what value she brings to you, not to me. You know what I mean? And I'm saying that because, again, what we're talking about is having hard questions and having a conversation and relationship that needs to be had. And the kids are not being told to have these conversations. We're not being told why our parents failed in their relationships. We're not being told why your parents stepped out of a relationship. We're not being told what not to look for, what to look for. Those are the things. My mom told me that my grandfather, it used to be stay out of grown folk conversation. That's a Southern term. Stay out of grown folk conversation. Well, your kids only see it broken. They don't understand the signs and symptoms of how things break. So how can you expect a different result if you don't teach them and then you don't talk to them about what breaks or how hard a marriage or relationship or even being a single man is, or being a divorced father or a mother? You know what I mean? When you educate them with that, they start to now say, well, here's what I got to look out for. And here's what I'm looking for when I'm going to choose a partner. It doesn't matter if you're going for the same sex or opposite sex. The requirements are still there because you're dealing with another person. Like your brother said, when he asked him, what if something happened to you both and you needed a number to take care of you both, the man and the woman or man and man or girl and girl all came up with different numbers. They had two different numbers, one high, one low, maybe some, and if they were too far off, they had to go back and talk about it. Those are the things that matter in the end. If you still have time, do you still have time to stay on with us for a little bit?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. The reason why I'm talking about this, and thank you to everybody who has been listening. Alex, if we take a moment to just plug in about you, where they can reach you at, find you out on social media, because again, there may be turns. I don't know if you guys do any kind of virtual consultations for people in different states to understand things about your program. Even if you're not in that location, they still could reach you and learn some things about, what your program's got to offer, or even do maybe some consultations with people in your program to get people in other locations things they need for their children. Because like you said, West Virginia and the Appalachian regions, Morgantown, there are people who may be looking for this, a program like yours, but it's not in their area, but they need to know the process on how to do things for their children and what resources you all can provide. Where can they find you at?
Yeah, so you can follow us. Our website is aboutyououtreach.org,
Hmm.
That is our home station. You'll kind of get the complete history and detail of our program. All of our socials are at About You NYC. Um, and you can reach out and you can kind of follow what we do with our student athletes, some of our initiatives. But those are the two easiest mediums.
Hmm.
And, feel free to reach out any way you can. We do offer programs that are virtually based. So no, if you're not in New York, for example, our test prep program, that's a virtual program. We have kids. We actually, you speak to the fact that Danique actually has a young man that he's training in the Virginia area, but he is a part of our SAT program. He
Mm.
actually attended one of our camps. So yes, there's opportunities for us to help folks. We actually were approached by some folks in our area to kind of create a program that speaks to the very thing that you're kind of you've spoken about for the last hour, and it's
Yeah.
providing sort of a platform where people can speak freely and
Hmm.
reach conclusions that are solution based. So
Right.
we're looking for we're definitely looking into the idea of serving as consultants to either educational systems,
Hmm.
community-based organizations that kind of want to speak to what exactly you're talking about, Phil, and that's just the development, the holistic development, and providing a plan for communities to operate, function, and lead to prosperity.
Cool. That's good. And the reason why I offer that, folks, is that sometimes people hear locations like New York, Northeast, and we've had people from in other countries. People sometimes think they're out of reach, and with the way the internet works, there's nothing but utilities that you have access to. And people may ask, why Ancestry Lands is doing something like this? Because again, this platform is a legacy business. It's something that I'm opening up to reaching, because people in your area, like you said about land ownership, you hear it all the time, these buzzwords, our community, everything now, even marketing, everything is a buzzword. Work hard. It's all these slogans we hear, all these motivational crap that we hear. Everybody loves about, empowerment. Let's go to Black Wall Street. Let's do this. And I'm like, okay, but what are you doing about it? Okay. The people in your area, New York City area, they people everywhere, they're saying ownership, ownership. Okay, but what do you own? You own a car, depreciating asset. Car breaks down, you don't own anymore because you got to get rid of, got to get a new car. People talk about, leasing and things like that. Yeah, okay, but again, the bank, someone else owns something. Ancestry Lands is about land ownership for you to be able to use land as a way to leverage that land for other things you need. What do you have in collateral? You don't have a good credit score, but you have a piece of property. You can leverage that for something else. It's tradable. It's something of value. It's something in an area that you actually can exchange or say, hey, in the bank, I have collateral. When I've gone to be approved for mortgages, I've listed down the income I've made from selling and owning land. And the bank says that's a value. The credit score makes the deal sealed and makes my amount go up instead of down. If I do that with the 9 to 5, I'm very limited by that income. In order to increase that income, I need to work more, be gone more, like you talked about. You're busy all the time. If you want to have a dream or be an entrepreneur on top of that, well, you're going to need more time to do something else, because you got to first fund your business to start a business. That nobody talks about that part. All these IG clips you see, they don't tell you about process. They just give you outcomes, which are pretty much ideas being sold as final solutions, but they don't tell you the math. That 1 + 1 is 2, right? 2 + 2 is 4. 5 + 5 is 11. No, it's not. I'm just joking. See if everybody's paying attention. But I'm saying is that, no one tells you process. They don't teach you how. There's no solutions. It's just outcomes.
Can I
I'm going to share.
interject?
Yeah, please
Can
go
I?
ahead.
So, because it dawned on me that one of the things that impacted our kids with the SAT, for example, was an
Mm,
inability to understand the mechanics of algebra, right?
wow.
So you went into right now in that last 2 minutes, you went into all of those specifics, right? And it dawned on me in one of the classes I attended with my partner, who's a brilliant math guy. And he
Right.
was trying to talk to our kids and explain math, and I had to stop him because I was looking at the kids' faces, and I was like, George, they have no clue what you're saying, right? So
Dear
even
grandmother.
you explaining that right now, but
Right.
what we devised was how to speak to the athlete. We used sport examples to talk to the
Mm.
kids about algebra, right?
Right.
When I hear about real estate, for example, and that's the one that
Right.
they try to really attack our community with, oh,
Right.
no money down and all that. I have no clue, by the way, right? But
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
I
Sure.
hear that, there's no plan. I have never seen a complete layout as to how to get involved in real estate, right?
Right.
It's always, as you said, buzzwords. And there's
Yep.
someone out that I could use as an example. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but the Wall Street Trapper. And for the record, I
Mhm.
have no affiliation with that guy, but
Right.
I really appreciate exactly how he communicates to our community about
Right.
finances, right? How do
Right.
you understand the stock market? No,
Mhm.
you're not going to get rich overnight, right? He
Right.
speaks to Warren Buffett and the importance of long-term investing, and that's how you win in this game. Phil,
Right.
there's no one when you went into that whole spiel, right? Like I could just see our community listening to you right now and going,
Right.
what is he talking about? What is he
Got it.
talking about? And
Got it.
so that's what we need. We need a clear curriculum, a
Right.
curriculum that is in layman terms, right?
Got
Because
it.
once again, algebra for our kids, the minute you add a letter into an equation, it
Mhm.
turns a kid completely off. Oh,
Got it.
coach, 2a plus MC equals X. Well, A is just a variable equaling 1. The minute
Got
the
it.
young person, oh wow, coach, that's exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, that's algebra. It's not,
Mhm.
it's not any magic trick, hocus pocus. So exactly what you're saying, Phil, if we had a curriculum that
Got
kind
it.
of speaks to that, it would lead to greater outcomes.
I'll give the kids a quick example on why land matters. Jay Prince owns a like 100 acres down in Texas that he's doing cattle farming from.
Mhm.
I believe he's selling straw and he's growing Angus beef that he's making money off of. Rick Ross bought hundreds of acres down in the Georgia area. Kanye West, good, bad, like it or love it, he had owns hundreds of acres out in Wyoming where he's done some of his recordings from. Some of his albums have been recording on. Billionaires own islands. People vacation generally in different real estate spots. People own parts of mountains. The reason why they do that is that land cannot be reproduced. You can't even do it. The only place I've seen it done is in the South China Sea. China's just built an island, but we haven't gotten to that point. Land is valuable because land, you can grow things on land, you can live on land, you can farm on land, you can lease on land, you can hunt on land, you can build basketball courts on land, you can do athletic things on land. But the thing is that when you own land, you don't need to do anything to it while you have it. A house you have to maintain, you have to pay a mortgage on. With the way it works for me, I ain't doing money down. You got to put some skin in the game so I know you're serious. You'll make payments to me just like you would a car payment. The only difference is at the end of it, you own the title and you can pass it on for generations to come. That's a very simple way of explaining it. And again, when you own land, I tell people all the time, worst thing you ever do is own one property. You need to own more than one property because at any point someone could be interested in buying the land and you can sell it for cash when you need it later on, where you don't have to work for the same thing that you've done when you own the land now. The land goes up in value like all real estate does. So later on, when you have a car that's broke down, and I mean, this is not exact, but you have a property that you bought from Ancestry Lands. You take that property and you go find someone that wants to buy it. You sell it for the price that you need to replace that new car. You have your new car from that land. Of course, you got to pay taxes, all of that stuff, not getting into finances of it. But again, that land was bought 10, 20 years ago by your father, who's passed it down to you. Now you have the cash to trade for something of other value that you need at your time. That's just a small way that land works for you and can work for you in the future. The hurdles to it, you might have bad credit. I don't do credit checks. You know why? Because credit is based on a filtering system to see who can be charged interest. This is why I don't charge interest, because I want people to have an opportunity to get ownership without being told that politicians need to give a program that takes from someone else. I bought the property, I put my money in it, I put my mouth in it, our family staked our future on it, and we're selling it to you for below retail value. Period, plain and simple. We're going to get into the next segment. All right. And that should help everybody who's thinking about, I don't know how much, 1,000 down, 250 a month. Any property generally is that way. Once you pay it off, you get the title. That's it. I'm paying the property taxes while that's going. So we still have to do our part while you're making payments to own the land. It's just that simple, folks. Ancestrylands.com. That's where you go to find a property. We got them on Ancestry on the YouTube channels. We got drone videos of all our properties there. We have them down in California City because Mike Tyson, he's bought a 40-acre ranch. I own 40-acre properties, and I wish I would have sold it to you, Mike. Mike, you better buy another 40. I'll get one for you. But he has it in California City. Look it up online. He's building businesses down there. I have properties right in the same city. They're not properties that you just got to go over a mountain. They have streets, roads, power, water, the Starbucks, Rite Aid, McDonald's. This is in an area to give you an advantage, economic advantage. All right, good. So our next segment here, we're going to go into, and I'm going to talk about this inflation calculator. Now, folks, you may be saying, oh, man, math, I'm getting out of here. Nope, you need to stay and pay attention. We already see somebody drop off. They don't want to know anything about inflation. Go ahead. We'll see if they stick around. This is one thing I'm talking about, why it's important for athletes, students, younger people to understand money at a small level, okay? And I'm going to share this with you, Alex. I hope you could chime in too. And maybe we all will learn something because I didn't know this until today. This is on smartasset.com, okay? Investing / inflation calculator. You hear about inflation all the time, okay? I'm going to use a simple fact of what this is going to show you is the value of a dollar over time. You now are in your teens, younger years, or you're in your 20s. You're meeting that young girl, that fine tenderoni or macaroni, if it's man, whatever your flavor is, or woman, whatever you're going for. All right. You like everything about them, right? This is your Uncle Phil talking here. You can't wait to be, all the young love. You remember young love, Alex, when you just smooching, you couldn't, you're holding hands, you practically one soul, right? Then you get older and you get married just and you like, man, if this woman don't leave out this house and jump off the roof, right? You can't stand each other. You can't wait for somebody to go to work so you can have time for yourself. That's what it turns into later. But before that happens, there's a misunderstanding that goes on, and we're going to show you an education. Shout out to Coach Greg Adams. He talked about this in a different way and showed a graph, but I want to show you some numbers and how they change over time. So this is an inflation calculator. This is if you are making $100 in 2003, 20 years later, what that $100 will be worth. And this is an adjustable calculator. Alex, I would love if you guys could use this to show your young people, because I think that what happens now is I just added something of value to your educational platform to give them some financial literacy. And again, I've asked him to be on the show and I'm giving him the gift. I'm just joking. But $100 in 2003, this is an average inflation rate of 2.69. We could go online and start looking at the inflation rate or what they're raising up the interest rates on, and this will start telling you. So folks, just jumping in, we're going over an inflation calculator so you can understand at a very basic level when you have a relationship, when you have a marriage, when you're talking about family, kids, and income. I'm going to be making this. Take the time out when you decide you want to get a degree. Find out what they're paying before you send your kids to college. Sit down and talk with your children about what we talk about, economic upward mobility. But again, the conversation happens when your children are looking at prospective degrees. If they're going to college, every college provides them with a book of choosable, selectable degrees. So they can't pick but from what is up there. They should take the time to go through that book. Sit down with them every night. Turn off the Xbox, PS4. Tell them you need to go through that book first and look at that book before you pick up the controller. My kids have to read books before they play video games or watch TVs. Do the same thing with your adult kids. They'll thank you for it later. They'll complain about it in the present. Get past that point because you are giving them a leg up where other societies, affluent societies, are doing this. Again, you are now being shown what to do. If you don't do it, you cannot complain or pass on economic institutional isms, blah, 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 blah. You can't complain about it. This is your responsibility. For the people watching this on a replay, this is your responsibility to educate yourself. You can go right up here and do what I'm doing, all right? We're going to do this in real time. This is $100 20 years ago to show you 20 years ago. I'm 40. I'm about to be 42. So, Alex, this was right around the time when I met you. Just shortly after I met you. You were what, in you were teens when I met you?
Yep. You met me in high
Right.
school. Yep.
Right. So he was teens when I met him just 20 years ago. 2003 is when I graduated college. 20 years today. This tells you here, and this is just a base inflation rate. This is cumulative for 20 years. And this is adjustable. You could change this number, right? So you can make this 10, go in here and change this number. You can input this. This is on smartasset.com. Smartasset.com. I'm gonna go up so you guys can see the or you can't see the web one. It's smartasset.com. It's a very simple inflation calculator. I found this with a simple Google search this morning, just for this show, because I want to provide value to the About You program. I know you said you wanted to see me at one of your events, but I said let me give you something now that y'all can do in the meanwhile. I'm a person that gives results real time. So this is $100 in 2003. It would be worth $159 in 2023. What that means, folks, is that the $100 that I would have given Alex when he was 14, 20 years ago, if I gave him that money to give him that same $100 today, I would have to pay him $159. That is not a increase for him. That is a decrease for the same value of that same $100. So again, what you need $100 for 20 years ago, now you need $159. So if a hot dog at Bronx Stadium and a Yankees game costs $100, it would cost $159 today for that same hot dog, folks. Just do this with your cars, do this with every aspect of your life, and you will see how you need to have a conversation with your partners, with your mate, with your parents, with your children about what's going on. So now what I'm going to do is walk this out 10 years, and I'm going to start it off at today, so we can get a real feel for what it is, and we're going to keep it at the same inflation rate, because we already know inflation is still going up in our current lifetime. Okay? And what I think the inflation rate is at, let's just give it at 6%. Okay, so we're going to give it at 6%. What our current interest rate is around now is around 5-6%. Okay, they're saying inflation's at 6%. We all know that is a lie. Case of mortgage, it's more like 10 to 15%. But I'm not a financial economist. So if it's at 6.5%, and that just keeps going up or staying the same, because we do have increasing interest rates. We're entering in a recession, no matter what they tell you. Your same $100 today, the $100 that you're making on income today will need to be worth $188 in just 10 years, folks. That means whatever you're making today, this is where your career choice comes into play. If you are not getting raises that are going to be matching the rate of inflation, what you will be making today, and when you get $200, you would have been able to, it's the same $100 you got today, folks. This is what we're talking about, economic upward mobility that Alex has talked about. This is why you need to use sports, not let sports use you, as he said. This is why I said we need to build skills in addition to our degrees and professions. One thing I like about these professional athletes is that they go off and do something else. You know, you could be a coach, but you build a business behind it. We need to build businesses back in this country. If you have a talent, if you got drip, then build a business about how to get better drip. Do something other than nothing. Stop making excuses. We don't need politicians or community leaders to get, the solutions are peer-to-peer. This little bit I'm showing is now going to probably be showed somewhere in About You in New York. And again, I'm not a mathematician. I'm a nurse. I'm just a nurse. I'm just putting in regular numbers here. And what it shows you is in 10 years, just 10 years, Alex will be in his 40s. I'll be in my 50s. Whoever's 20s will be 30s. Teenagers will be 20-something-year-olds now going out there. And this economic inflation calculator, just regular numbers. You come in here, you can change this to 10. I'm just doing $100. From 2023 to 2033, you will need $188 in 10 years to match what you have now. When you're having a relationship, a marriage, this is something I showed my wife earlier. And I said, yeah, we could break up. Not that we're going to break up. We could break up, but you got to deal with this number in 10 years. If something happens to me, what you going to do about this number in 10 years? How much do you make? And if you think Uncle Joe and them's going to be helping you out, we're already at 33 trillion. What do you think they're going to be doing? How much little bit of money are they going to be handing out? East Palestine, Ohio, the railroad people are saying they're going to give an inconvenience check of $1,000. This has been reported on news. I'm only speaking about what's on the news. How is that going to help when $1,000 today will not be worth the same $1,000 in 10 years? This is what people are missing. We need to get away from surviving and start thriving as individuals, as Americans, as human beings, folks. And it just shows you over time. This is where it is now. In 2028, the value of $100 today will be worth $137. That's how much you will need. And you wonder why your groceries, why things are going up. Here's the calculator to show you. This is why when you started your career 10 years ago, when I was married or met my wife 10 years ago, this is what we were talking about. We didn't have the calculator when we entered in our relationship to understand certain things. I'm going to stop sharing. And again, this is smartasset.com. We're giving you things of value, folks. And again, this is what I'm talking about. So again, where does land come into play on that? Well, again, land makes up a difference because in some cases, the value of land can go up to match some of the cost of inflation. Again, land is all it is something else in Batman's utility belt. You know, when he has an extra grapple gun or the battle rings, it's the same thing. It's just another tool, economic tool to give you power, real power on how to alleviate yourself or offload things. You know, let me sell this because I need a little bit of extra change. That's what it's for. Alex, what are your thoughts on that calculator there? And again, that's from smartasset.com, inflation calculator.
Yeah, I mean, it speaks to what we talk about here, and that's knowledge. Knowledge leads to freedom. Knowledge leads to the ability to make appropriate decisions that are going to impact your future, and that's exactly what we try to do here. We try to provide our kids with just every bit of information so that they can make informed decisions. And what you did right now, Phil, was identified, hey, listen, this is what's going to impact you in the future. What's your buying power look like? You know, what are the implications of inflation in totality, right? People, right. You know, we speak to the fact that, yeah, it's going to impact every aspect of your life. You're going to go to the grocery store and that $1 of water is now $1.75. Right. You know, that bag of chips. And I try to bring it down to our kids on that level. That bag of chips, when I grew up, a bag of chips was 25 cents. Mm-hmm. Now it's 75. Right. You know, 25 cents pack of gum is now 45 cents. You know, and so those are micro levels. So that right. The cost of inflation is also going to impact college tuition, high school tuition. You know, so it impacts every area of our life. And once again, Phil, it's just something that we don't have real conversations about. And it's just, I love what you're doing. It's like I said, it's in alignment with our mission and our vision of making a better, as you see at the top, community.
Right. Right. Definitely. I think that, and one of the reasons why I bring this up is that you have access to a younger generation. My kids are in the same younger generation. And where people think that we're so disconnected, like I talked about, is that my kids are going to grow up and they're going to interact with one of your kids if they happen to cross paths. The economic stability of a society, a generation is going to matter, even if you're not in the same community, because those decisions, those outcomes, the crime rates, the economic level of, a generation is going to matter to the people who have things. Because again, you're paying taxes for programs to support other people who don't have stuff. So again, it goes hand in hand. You want to talk about why taxes are going up? Well, they go up because you have to support people who are not taught these things. It's in our interest to invest in teaching people things. But again, we can't get the politicians to get out of their own way and get their head out of their own behinds because they're too busy trying to win brownie points and play the blame game. They're the reason why our communities are broken. And I'm going to give it why Black, white, green, Asian communities are broken is because we've got politicians too busy arguing and fighting over who's to blame. They're talking about is Joe Biden woke? Who cares if he's awake or asleep? Who cares? Who cares if he don't know what America is with I'm about a food about a? Again, we need people in there who are talking about solutions. All he got to do is sign. We need people who are going to make some changes in here. We need people talking about it at the bottom level. And I could come up here and interview you and talk about how great I am, but I'm showing you something that you can take to other children, other people, no matter who they are. Trust me, there are white kids who don't know this either. There are families. One thing I've learned about being around Caucasian people or white people as a whole is that they discriminate on an economic level. The reason why I'll say this is how many times you see an affluent white person hanging around with the less affluent black person. But in other communities, I would say in our communities, we tend to accept the range a little bit more easily. Everybody thinks that, this whites are only against blacks. The problem is they don't know enough about us realistically, how we operate, how we affect, because we're so worried about being separated from them and looking at them as this evil monster, as opposed to it's simply a matter of cultural ignorance. But again, we allow our rap music, our culture to be influential to them, but we don't understand that they are actually buying into us. We just are selling the worst parts. We're not selling them the best of us. We're selling them the worst of us. We need to change that up, take out the negative stuff and sell them the positive stuff. So again, we can, when I say dominate, I'm not talking about dominating and oppressing. I'm talking about dominating through influence, through the demand was there. And I'm going to show you how constantly, I went over Lewis Latimer yesterday, how he was sought after. He worked with Alexander Graham Bell. Lewis Latimer, look him up. He was the first African-American inducted in Thomas Edison's pioneers at a time right after slavery, right after the Emancipation Proclamation. He didn't make excuses. He labored. That's what he did. He worked with Alexander Graham Bell, and he was instrumental in getting the patent for the telephone. He couldn't have done it without him. And they beat out the other person that would have done it that very same day, just hours before. And then he went on to help Thomas Edison, where he created, they used to burn the light bulbs with paper inside. Most people don't know that. So your students watching this, they go around looking at, they only see blacks as being some subculture. No, there were blacks doing it when he was born into a time where slavery still existed. And then he was 20s when the slavery ended. And then he went on to achieve sometime 20 years after that. And he became only black in there. What he was doing was competing, and he dominated. Thomas Edison, he might have his reservations about blacks at that time, but one thing Latimer did, he showed up with results and outcomes. He got a process solution. He showed them, hey man, this filament works, and he had to pay him. Nobody knows about this man. He's not taught in Black history, but we should learn about him. The next person I'm going to talk about, and again, Alex, you please let me know whenever you got to sign off, because I'm going to show you about another. I always do. Part of my broadcast is talking about taking away the excuses that blacks make, because we're giving excuses in the White House on why they can't fix or who's to blame for East Palestine. You got the GOP saying it's got something to do with woke culture. We are not worried about the people down there, boots on the ground. They said that the news reported that the Department of Transportation Secretary didn't even talk about it until 10 days after it happened. We made sure we had Super Bowl before we talked about what's going on in East Palestine, Ohio. If you got family anywhere in the southern states, I've shown yesterday those waterways drain right out. We got dead fish. They drain right out into those southern states, into the western states, where white America exists too as well, and so does Black America and all the other minority cultures that everyone wants to talk about. And again, this is not about black or white being affected. Everyone's going to be affected.
Yeah, I got a few minutes, okay. Phil.
Well, why don't we let you go, and I'll take over on this part, man. And that way we can spare your time. I don't want to interrupt this next section. Could people please find out where to and first of all, I want to thank you for coming on to the show. I hope to have you back. I hope that we can actually meet in the person. We can do a live together where we talk about, what's actually going on. I can take a visit and see what you're doing in your program. I love what you're doing. I'm trying to find my way to support through utilizing my platform as a voice to you and offering value to your students with things that I know of and learn. And I hope I have the opportunity to talk about that more in depth when I do meet them all in person.
No, absolutely. And Phil, man, I thank you just as a citizen for the type of work that you're engaging in and the fact that you're willing to have these type of conversations. Because ultimately, man, we've been repeating this same sort of pump the fist and
Yeah,
enough is enough. There's enough
yeah.
information. There's individuals like yourself who are providing the information, right? What you just provided right now is gold. And so I hope people are listening. They make
Yeah,
sure that they really follow this and then apply it. So it's no
yeah,
good. Information is no good unless you apply it. So once
absolutely.
again, man, Bill, I really appreciate what you're doing. Thank you for having me, and we will absolutely be working together in the future. Thank you, brother.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Alex, thank you for coming on the show. Alex Coombs, everyone. Please let's give Alex a round of applause, folks, for being on the show. And go and find Alex and About You. That's ABOUTU, not YOU. What is that? Outreach.org.
Outreach.org, or you can
Mhm.
follow us on our social media platforms at About You, the letter U,
Yep.
NYC.
Right. I always love that joke. Who detected you? No, you. Who died? Lee? You? He's like, no, you. No, you. Detective you. No, you. Alex, thank you so much, man. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for coming.
Take care, man. Take
All
care.
right. Bye-bye. Okay, folks, I'm back on. So again, let's just again give Alex Coombs, man, round of applause on that one, man. I appreciate it, folks. One of the things, and I think the people for watching, I will say this. I'm going to take a moment to just talk about what I love about this is that doing YouTube, having a land business, the journey of building a business, you have to enjoy the journey. You have to enjoy the process. You got to enjoy building it one brick at a time. One thing that I've loved about investing in land and learning about land is the conversations that I've learned in understanding land, how to sell land, how to build a business, having employees, Eric, Marie, Sarah, who's a newer employee, and my cousin Crystal. Thank you all so much because, again, even teaching how we're marketing land, there's knowledge that I'm building upon that I can build skills to teach my children. Talked about this yesterday. And I'm going to keep on talking about it because, again, and as parents, no matter what color or race you have, when you do things, that knowledge can get passed on for your children to learn about, to understand. They may not understand it all in full, but again, we should be passing on knowledge and teaching skills along the way, things that our children can glean from. My father used to always say that word so much. Man, a shout out to my mom and dad, man. uh that you can glean things from as you teach your children. Our job is to teach them, not just care for them and send them off on their way. That's what having a business and learning these things, learning skills. My kids look forward to the live streams that I have. They always ask me, "You doing a live stream, Dad?" And it's something I can converse with them about what I talked about. Folks, our next section that we're going to talk about right now is less excuses and more. I don't even know what we're going to talk about, but we're going to talk about I want to talk. I always like to go back and do a little bit of history lesson. And this is not to just show, oh, black people do this, black people did that. It's to show that we're not taught what blacks have done when they did not have excuses to make. They took advantage of opportunities and how they were sought after when they had the results to show. Guru means teacher. Got it. Kevin Saunders, thanks for joining us, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for the comment too, as well. Like, share, subscribe. And folks, guess what? You can also donate to the platform to help us keep this going, help provide information. $ Ancestry Lands on Cash App, Ancestry Lands on Venmo. We're on Facebook. Go subscribe, like, share. I appreciate people for stopping in and giving me some time out your day. But I'm going to talk about someone else that I always like to go back to black historical figures. I'm not going to just do just black figures. I'm going to talk about people of history that did things that matter. And one of the reasons why I'm doing it this month because it's Black History Month. Next month I'll do an Irish person or something. We'll just go through Irish people who've contributed. Why should we give love to just one culture? We need to educate people and so they can understand. One culture will lose their way and others will lose their way too. Because with the way our societies are going, nothing is being taught. We're only being told and shown what to do to become machines. And then we have machines that are learning from us to become humans. I talked about then the AI conversation from the other day. And I want to talk about another person, historical figure that was of note that it asked the question in our next segment: was the real Lone Ranger black? Or was he the inspiration behind the Lone Ranger? Now, of course, we know back in the time there was, in Hollywood, there wasn't exactly, people of color representing there. They're having all their Oscar issues now. But we're going to talk about somebody who was about the business. All right. And I'm actually going to show you a picture of this man because, again, I keep showing people who lived during the time right in through slavery, after slavery was abolished or the Emancipation Proclamation happened, and they went out and did stuff in the world. They had oppression, they had, beyond what we could ever complain about today, but they still show that they were about it. They were about being successful. They were about accomplishing. They showed their work. Today's person of highlight historical figure is a gentleman by the name of Bass Reeves. You might have seen him in a movie starring Ving Rhames, I believe. Let me just look this up now. Let me see. Bass Reeves, law enforcement officer. There was a movie, Bass Reeves, with who is this here? Let me see who this is. Sorry, folks. I got to look up and see who starred in there. There's a biography about Bass Reeves. Stars James A. House, Santiago Villalobos, and Craig Rainey. This is a drama based on the life of Bass Reeves, the first African-American United States Deputy Marshal. That is his claim to fame. We're going to go through here, highlights here. This is a picture of Mr. Bass Reeves back in the day. He wore the traditional Western style thick beard here. And Mr. Bass Reeves, the reason why I talk about this is because who is educating our people on our people? We get told about the lack of opportunity, systematic this, racism that. We get told about all of these isms that these are the reason why we need to always feel sorry. I know, look at the mustache, right? This dude, bro, that looks like, honestly, just think about it, like you could scrub something with that. I want to know, this is my question about the Old West, right? Because we know maybe toothpaste wasn't out like that or people weren't into brushing heavily. But yo, how did you kiss somebody with a mustache like that, right? Like mine is a little thin and you got to trim on the edges, man. But that is a gnarly beard, a mustache. Goodness gracious. It was that thick, like all around here, you know? Is that Sam Elliott? I forget who's the guy who played in, which one's Wyatt Earp? The one with, there's two Wyatt Earps. There's Kevin Costner's, I believe he's Tombstones, and there's Wyatt Earp with what's the actor's name? Somebody help me out here in the chat. Dang, I forget the other actor. The two Western movies. One's with Kevin Costner. I believe that's Wyatt Earp, and I think Tombstone is with because he had a beard like that. I forget the actor's name, but Val Kilmer was in that other one that I'm talking about. He's the one he was like, come on, Earp, let's play to the death for blood. And then Val Kilmer comes out. It's big on IG. He's like, I'm your Huckleberry. He's like, that's just my game. He's like, I think it's a classic quote. Val Kilmer, man, he was great in that movie, man. If you ever get time, go watch Tombstone with Val Kilmer, man. But that was a great movie. Val Kilmer was awesome in that movie. But anyway, back to Bass Reeves, folks. We're going over the first black for something. Yesterday was Lewis Latimer, and today is Bass Reeves. You're going to ask me, hey, Phil, do you teach your kids about this? Yes, I do. I do. Their mother's white, but I teach them about that because, again, no one should make them inferior without their consent first. They shouldn't be taught that. They should understand where they come from on both sides. And that's something that's not being taught with our people. Bass Reeves, born in 1838 of July. Most people know that Emancipation Proclamation was until 1865 for people who don't want a little bit of history lesson. And this is going to be exciting because we're going to talk about how this man was about it. You want to talk about somebody who was, I don't know, younger people, he was getting the ops out there heavy. He definitely was out there. He was about that life. And he lived in a time where slavery, oppression, and we had the Reconstruction of the South. And, he was out west in the Oklahoma Territory. He was a American law enforcement official, historically noted as the first black deputy U.S. Marshal west of the Mississippi River. He worked mostly in Arkansas and the Oklahoma Territory. Okay. Early in his life, he was born into slavery. Yes, I am going through a history lesson because anybody, if you can learn about Drake and where he came from, you learn about Mr. Bass Reeves. Teach your kids something, folks. He was born into slavery, not a free citizen in the United States that has the right to vote, TikTok, has a cell phone, Cash App, and an IG account. Born into slavery in Crawford County, Arkansas. He was named after his grandfather, Bass Washington. Reeves and his family were enslaved by the Arkansas state legislator, William Steve Reeves. When Bass was about 8 years old, folks, that's right, 8 years old, same age as my daughter, William Reeves moved to Grayson County, Texas, near Sherman and Peters Colony. It appears plausible that Reeves was kept in bondage by William Steve Reeves' son, Colonel George R. Reeves, a Texas sheriff. And we're going to go on more than that. When the American Civil War began, don't forget, folks, Emancipation Proclamation, George Reeves joined the Confederate Army. That's the South, folks, forcing Bass to go with him, forcing him to go with him. He had to fight against the North. It's unclear how and exactly when Bass Reeves escaped. He escaped. Now, again, this man was born into slavery. He was owned by another human being. He had to escape his own bondage, right? But at some point he did during the Civil War and gain his freedom. So you talk about people now getting government checks, STEMI checks, PPP loans, and this man actually had to fight for something that was not there that we all have now. Freedom. I wasn't born a slave. I was born to my mother and my father. I didn't have oppression to start with. I was born with a social security number and an opportunity to become something in this world. This man escaped slavery and bondage during the Civil War, where he was forced to fight for the South. One account recalls how Bass Reeves and George Reeves had an altercation over a card game. Yes, education is important. Shout out to all my cousins who think I'd speak like a white person, but I read well like a literate person. And that's my cousins for the South. I'm actually firing, that's subliminals to all of y'all who say that I'm a white man, but I don't know how I'm losing my blackness because I speak literally. I speak with literacy. Bass severely beat George, so he whipped his behind back in those days where brothers could get killed for putting hands on a person of non-color. I'm gonna speak in our today's terms to give this a little bit of modern understanding. So at a time where the American Civil War began, and if you don't know, the North was trying to free the slaves as a part of, there's many reasons why that, but the North wanted to free the slaves. South said, nah, we ain't about it. We're the ops now, right? So this is for modern children to understand, and more of that this is speaking to their terms. The South is the ops. The North is we're about to go to war, right? This is the real stuff that happened. Because he was owned as a slave, he was brought with the Southern person who fought for the Confederacy to be part of this, and he was forced to do it. Bass said, nah, I'm out of here. And he severely beat George and fled to Indian Territory, where he lived among the Cherokee, the Creeks, and the Seminoles. Florida, stand up. Bass stayed with these Native American tribes and learned their languages. I'm sorry. Could we stop right there? Did they just say this brother learned Native American languages? Why is ignorance promoted in the Black community? This man was born a slave. He escaped his captor or his slaver at the time, person that supposedly owned him, put hands on him and beat him severely, put the paws on him, smashed his ears together, and fled into Indian Territory where he couldn't be found by the ops. The Cherokee, Creeks, and Seminoles were helping a brother out. People of color helping out other ones. Wasn't this, oh, you're not Black, this, and this. It was people of color standing up. I'm not advocating anything now, but I'm just talking about historical facts. He stayed with the Native American tribes and learned their language. Brother learned their language. I don't know if you don't know, but during this time, it wasn't commonplace to teach reading and writing. Another thing that we have an advantage of, as opposed to a man who was born in 1838. So first of all, this brother was born during slavery times, had to fight in the Civil War for the South, for the man that owned him, end up saying, nah, I'm not about that, put paws on the man, stomped his ears together, trying to see the white meat, fled to the Indian Territory, where he was held down, right? Hiding out. Ops are searching for him. The Southerners are searching for him. He ain't go north. He went to the Indians. Safety, Cherokee, Creeks, Seminoles, Florida stand up again. Stayed with them and learned their language until he was freed by the 13th Amendment in 1865. So, by my count, that man was about 27 years old when he gained his actual freedom through the Emancipation Proclamation, 13th Amendment. So, you all can know 13th Amendment, a little bit of history lessons for you. But he stayed with them, hiding from the ops because he severely smashed the man's ears together to get away from them and hide out Native American territory. Again, we are so oppressed nowadays, but this man could have been deleted, taken off the chessboard because he stomped a man's ear together that supposedly owned him under the law at that time. How about his oppression? How about his racism? How about his economic lack of upward mobility? He had to hide out, but what did he do? He educated himself while he was in his oppression. He educated himself. He learned a native, I don't know which language but he learned the language of Native Americans, despite arguably being a person that could not read or write. But what he did was he educated himself despite his economic non-level of prosperity. That's what he did. He educated himself. As a freed man, 13th Amendment, for people who don't know the Constitution or Bill of Rights, 13th Amendment abolished slavery in 1865. Little history lessons. I hope they teach this in school because your Uncle Phil's teaching you something. He then moved to as a free man. He moved to Arkansas and farmed near Van Buren. Okay, so this is what we're going to talk about. This man, Bass Reeves, was born in 1838, a person of color who became the first U.S. Deputy Marshal west of the Mississippi. And again, he was about it. I'm going to go back again. He said, I'm not about being oppressed. I'm not going to fight in a war against the South. I'm going to stomp this man. He says right here, Bass severely beat George, severely beat. Now, for people who don't know the South, the way I grew up north, but I was born in the South. Down south, shout out to the South, all right? When a good old-fashioned Southern whooping is way different than when you get beat and fight up north. Because once again, when you fighting down south, you getting real beat. When I say beat, there's a saying, beat like an old Virginia slave. Well, this man put pause and probably beat this man like an old Virginia slave. Up north, there's no saying for that. I grew up north. Fights are usually one-on-one. You might get jumped, but nobody's busting it up to the white meat. This man who was a slave he beat this man like an old Virginia slave. The slave beat the man like an old Virginia slave. I'm not advocating for violence, but I'm talking about someone who was held down through slavery. He wasn't even freed, and he decided he had to do something about it. When he fled, he went to the Native Americans, learned their language. He just wasn't about staying there and living off the Native Americans. What he did was he learned the language. He learned how to operate within Native American society. You might say he assimilated to some degree, but he wasn't looking for handouts. Moving on. Reeves and his family had a family, farmed until 1875 when Isaac Parker was appointed federal judge for the Indian Territory. Probably not a brother. Parker appointed James F. Fagan as U.S. Marshal, directing him to hire 200 deputy U.S. Marshals. Fagan heard about Reeves, knew that homeboy was about that life, knew that he had previously stomped people's ears together. Okay? Crescent kicks, wheel kicks, roundhouses, and uppercuts. He was a man who was fighting to not be held down and be oppressed. He escaped oppression. He also learned the language. He was of value because in his time to learn the language, he understood Native American language, which means he offered something of value to the person that was seeking him out. James F. Fagan. Fagan, I didn't even read this part. I haven't read this before. I just decided to look this man up because I'm interested in learning about him myself. I don't know about this guy. Mr. Reeves. I've never heard of him. I've heard of Wyatt Earp, Battle of the OK Corral. I've never heard of Mr. Bass Reeves. And I'm sure in history and schools, they won't be teaching this, even in the Black communities. Bass Reeves will not be taught, but he will be taught here on Ancestry Lands. One generation from the next. Know where you came from, know where you're going, folks. Fagan heard about Reeves, who knew the territory and could speak, what did I just say, folks? Several native languages. Several. So the brother probably couldn't read, probably couldn't write, but he learned not one, but more than one, several. Fagan knew about Bass Reeves, who knew the territory, and he spoke several native languages. The brother here, right? 1838. Okay. He recruited him as deputy. Reeves was the first black deputy. So anybody watching this and whatever else talk about, black people can't read, you can always listen, just use me as an example. We can read. That's a common misnomer, misconception. And again, this brother spoke several Native American languages. Honestly, I know Rosetta Stone has French, Spanish, Italian. I don't know if Rosetta Stone's that has Cherokee, Seminole, or Creek Indian, but this brother in the 1875s, he had spent all that time before then learning not one, but multiple Native American languages. And he could speak them. He was recruited at a time post-slavery where people were still being disparaged, being called names and all sorts of things. And still blacks were still not looked at, African Americans were not looked at as, they were still being looked at as second-rate citizens. Reeves was assigned deputy. And don't forget, he was about that life too, folks. I'm going to go back to that again. Brother in here stomping ears together. He was assigned as a deputy U.S. Marshal for the Western District of Arkansas, which he had responsibility, which means he had authority also for the Native Reservation Territory. He served there until 1893. So if this is 1875, that's a good on what, 18 years? 18 years he served as so this brother was also a deputy U.S. Marshal for 18 years. Okay, 1893. We ain't talking about, but it's less than 30 years after the slaves were freed. People weren't coming together. Martin and Malcolm weren't there yet to come in here and help and talk about everybody coming together. This was a time when people were they were not having it, folks. And this man was the first black deputy U.S. Marshal for 18 years. Then he transferred to the Eastern District of Texas. Don't worry, folks. It's going to get more interesting. So remember, prior to this time, this man was already known for stomping people's ears together. A brother. Bass Reeves up here. We're going to get back down to it. This man was putting hands, feet, and paws, stomping people's ears together. We're going to get to his record of soon, but I don't want to get too far ahead because I really want people to understand that long ago, when blacks were given opportunities, they took advantage of them. Hell, I would even say this man, he wasn't even given an opportunity. He took advantage of it. He didn't make excuses. He made solutions, folks. So again, he served in the transferred to the Eastern District of Texas in Paris, Texas for a short while. In 1897, he was transferred again, serving at the Muskogee Federal Court in Native Territory. So maybe they would transfer him because he was just stomping too many people out. He's about that action. He worked for 32 years as a federal peace officer. This man, 1838. 1870, that's 1838. Born a slave, family a slave, owned by people. Civil War breaks out. Man puts hands, feet, paws, and severely beats this man to the point where he had to leave, escape, and head out with the Indian and the Indian territories. He didn't hang out with one tribe, hang out with 3 of them. Learned the language, could speak it fluently, and was transferred multiple times. And we're going to speculate here. We have no knowledge of that. For probably put the hands and paws on anybody that was going to be disrespectful to him, because he had already done it before at a time with a person who was supposedly oppressing him. So for 32 years as a federal peace officer in the Indian Territory, became one of Judge Parker's most valued deputies. Brother became one of the most valued deputies. Why? Why? Was because he was asking for a handout? Was it because he was asking for another PPP loan? Was he asking for come help us because we need it? Was he saying that we don't have enough? No, he started from nothing and he worked his way up. I'm not going to advocate for violence here, but in this scenario, putting hands and feet on bad people in society helped him to get up to an elevated situation where he could be valued by a judge. Judge Parker, what no brother. And in 32 years being after post-slavery time, They're not teaching your kids this in school. Why? Okay, now we're going to look at what he did. Was he shying away, trying to get a handout? Was he about affirmative action? Or was he about the action? Was he about getting people? I'm going to tell you like this. This man built up such a reputation that when he came around, I'm going to say that most people probably knew one or two things was coming on. This is probably one of the sounds they heard. Is that Bass Reeves? Are you serious? That's Bass Reeves? You said that's Bass Reeves, the Bass Reeves, right? And then when he stood up and walked over and knew that you were on his you were on his ish list. I'm gonna say this because I got kids that, my kids watch the show, so I don't want to always say this. But when he saw you and knew you was his target, this is probably what people heard in the saloon. You know what that means, right? Somebody about to get their ears stomped together. So we're going to nickname him Bass Reeves, the ear stomper, because in the 1800s, early 1900s, Bass Reeves seemed like he was stomping people's ears together, folks. Out in the West, brother with a gun and a revolver, and he's out here. Yep, okay, all right. And this just gets deeper. I'm getting ahead of myself, folks. I'm speaking. I have not read this, so everything I'm commentating on right now is live and direct, and I'm reading along. I have not gotten to this point, and I'm already seeing evidence of what happens with this brother who through his labor of his efforts, he showed his work, and he had the ability to go in and apprehend, brought in some of the most dangerous fugitives of that time. So this man, he didn't shy away from work. He wasn't asking for affirmative action. He wasn't asking for handouts. He wasn't going on Section 8. He wasn't getting any kind of free, no interest loans from Bank of America or Wells Fargo. He was actually going out into the West, learning the Native American language, and he was going in there and putting hands, feet, paws, dirty boots with cow and horse manure, stomping people's ears together, folks. Stomping people's ears together. Correct? Stomping people's ears together to the point where he had his own theme music, folks, where people heard one of two sounds. This noise when you knew something was about to go down. That's the noise they heard when they knew something's about to happen. You see those Westerns, people over there trying to figure out what's happening here, and they said, Bass Reeves is coming. Guess what it is? That's Bass Reeves. That means part of your bass is going to get stomped together, okay? That's what's happening with Bass Reeves. Salute to Bass Reeves and the Reeves family. Of any generation of people out here, I would love to have you on the show to interview you about how this man was putting hands, feet, paws, and smashing people's ears together, giving them wheel kicks, roundhouse, and crescent kicks, letting people know this is the reason why he was so bad. And I'm going to show you the proof why he was stomping people out, okay? He brought in the most dangerous fugitives. He wasn't going here and picking up protesters. He wasn't here picking up people who identify as something. He was picking people up who were about that life in the 1800s, the Wild West, the lawless West. He was never wounded, despite his hat and belt. Belt is on your waist, folks. Being shot off on separate occasions. Also, his ability to have children, if that's about 4 inches low. We know brothers like to hang low. So, he was safe in most cases, and that is a joke for me. In addition to being a marksman, so he wasn't a person that was getting shot. He was also a person that was going to clap back. With a rifle and a revolver, this man was about the Second Amendment right. For all the people in here that don't understand the importance of the Second Amendment, your ancestors, the people who came here before you, were about that life. They were using the weapons of the time, and they were not being disarmed. They were fully armed. He developed superior detective skills during his long career. Right here, Reeves developed superior detective skills during his long career. This is definitely one of my longer shows. And this is episode 5, folks. This is episode 5 of my streams. We're covering Bass Reeves right now. A man, we're calling him Bass, that's your Bass, Reeves, the head and ear stomper. Okay, because he was stomping people's ears together. That's what he's known for. Okay, putting hands, feet, and paws on everybody who was on his list. And again, folks, he picked up some of the most dangerous fugitives of his time. If you thought you was a thug, you ain't met Bass Reeves yet, because Bass was on your Bass. New Deal era was bad for everyone. Kevin Saunders, appreciate your chat there, buddy. New Deal era is bad for all of us. Yeah, we need to bring back being more Bass Reeves. We need to raise some people up, be like that. The ear stompers. Stomping your ears together. You ever think of, like, when I say ear stomp, see these ears right here? Stomping them together on the sides. You just stomp the ears together. Boots full of cow manure and horse manure. So you definitely are having an infection afterwards, even if you do survive that one. But I'm sure if they did have the spurs back there, whew, that was deadly. He developed superior detective skills, which this man taught he could critically think. This man could critically think. He had detective skills, and they used the word superior to describe this black man who actually learned how to speak multiple Native American languages. He also was putting hands and feet on his previous slavers. He also escaped and hid out from the ops in the Indian territories, and he learned multiple Native American languages, which Rosetta Stone, to my knowledge, might be wrong, has no Rosetta Stone for Cherokee, Creek, and Seminole languages. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. He was a marksman with a rifle revolver. He had recorded over 3,000 arrests of felons. And again, I am just reading off a historical person. I'm not advocating for any violence, but I'm letting you know this man did not make excuses, and he labored for his legacy. He labored for his legacy. He had deleted 14 outlaws to defend his life, so people wanted to test him. He had even back in that day, people had the F around and find out. That's what they were doing. They said, yo, I don't really think you about that action. Hey, Bass, I don't think you're really about that action. You know what Bass said? Well, let's have you. What did he say? Let's have you mess around and find out. F around and find out. I dare you. I dare you. You know what they said afterwards? Oh, hell no. Exactly. Okay. Exactly. What happened after Bass put them hands, paws, and boot with the spurs on you? You said, oh, hell no. Right? Because you knew what was coming, right? Man already had his own theme music. The first thing you heard was Danger. Bass Reeves is coming. He's here now. There's no escaping. My man's nice with the long rifle and the revolver. 21 problems, he could solve them. No problem. I'm rapping now, but I'm not a rapper. He developed superior detective skills. So even if you tried to hide out, it was more than likely this brother was going to find you. Let's look at a picture of Reeves right now. Even with the mustache that looks like an elongated Brillo hot dog, he was going to find you. You're not hiding out from him. He's sniffing you out. Superior detective skills here, folks. And if he has to chase you, there's a good chance he is putting paws on you. He's stomping your ears together, folks. He had deleted 14 outlaws in his lifetime to defend his life. He was never wounded, despite having his hat and belt shot off. Recorded with over 3,000 arrests of felons, he took on the most dangerous of fugitives. Reeves had to arrest his own son for deleting his wife. I'm sorry, are you telling me this man, self-defense is not violence? Absolutely, Kevin Saunders. But today, what would they have you do? They would have you sit there, like we've seen in the cases of California, these people walking in here, getting held up, their lives being threatened. They're going to tell you never to defend yourself. This man was utilizing his Second Amendment right, and he was definitely getting rid of the trash that was located in that society, terrorizing what communities, folks? This is a repeat of today. Black and brown communities. He was in charge of Native American territories, and people were terrorizing Native American territories. This is not defund the police. This is Bass Reeves is the police. He's coming through and he's putting ears together by force, stomping them out. So Benny Reeves was his son. He deleted his own wife. Reeves, despite being disturbed and deeply shaken by the incident, this man is human. Reeves nonetheless insisted on the responsibility of bringing Benny to justice. I'm sorry, do we have a black father taking accountability for the actions of his sons and holding him accountable? It must be the old school. I know what that is, right? This man's son deleted his own wife. He said, shook by it, shaken by what his son could do. He said, I got to bring him in. Dad's bringing him in. Benny was subsequently captured, tried, and convicted. This man he could have gotten capital punishment. He arrested his own son in 1907. I'm sorry, he was born in 1838. 1907 makes him almost 70 years old. This man is 69. He brought in his own son for deleting his wife. He was bouted. This man should be talked about. Why is Bass Reeves not talked about on Black History Month? I mean, we all love a brother. With the Wakanda Forever people, right? Here is your Black American Panther here. This man, again, this is Black Panther here. This is the real Black Panther. They said that this man was possibly the inspiration for the Lone Ranger. I'm sorry. I think this man's the inspiration for Black. This man is the Western Black Panther. Can we please get a movie about Bass Reeves as the Black Panther in the West of America, taking people down, not with Wakanda technology, but with regular rifle revolver, folks, stomping people's ear together with Wakandan technology back in the 1800s. I think we had a movie there. What did Joe Biden do? Not political. Kevin Saunders comes in again. Appreciate you, Kevin Saunders. Not to get political. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think don't we have a video of what Joe Biden? What did he say? America is described as Wapabita butter. I know, right? That would sound like a great movie. This man, 1838, summarizing with his history. For people who are watching, spare with me. I'm just going back over because people are coming in and out. They don't know what we're talking about. But Bass Reeves, first Black African-American, whatever you want to call it. He was born a slave. He was born into slavery, fought Civil War, stomped the man's ear together during a card game, put his ears together, meshed his ears so the white meat came out. Bro, you burned, what is that? Bernie Mac lovers, right? Beat him to the white meat. Then he fled into Indian territory, said, forget about the ops. I'm going to learn a Native American language. I'm not going to learn Cherokee. I'm going to learn Cherokee, Creek, Seminole, and other languages. Then he was sought out by a judge after 1865, 13th Amendment, Emancipation Proclamation. They were free. Then after that, he goes in there and be sought after because he knew the territory and he spoke multiple languages despite probably not being able to read and write. This man I'm sorry. This is Black history here, folks. Every day on Ancestry Lands, when I go live, I will cover a person of note. And this man was bouted. All right. And salute to Chadwick Boseman, man. God rest the dead, man. Great actor, was about positivity and everything else, man. I am not talking about him as an actor, but I'm saying Bass Reeves needs to be the Western Black Panther, the Wakanda. We should go with Wakanda West. All right. Because this man ended up arresting his own son for deleting his own wife, the son's wife. His son Benjamin Benny Reeves was charged with deleting his own wife. Man said, "Listen, man, I'm going to take him in." He's about that action. That's what was happening. And I mean, you know, my dad and I have gotten in issues. As a son, I will say I tried my dad sometimes. And my dad was, you know, my parents are from the South. I was born in the South too. You know, in those times, you put hands on your kids. You know what I mean? You got to put paws on your kids to let them know, yo, look, man, you ain't going to try me. I was a teenager. You know what I mean? So it's a good chance Benny put up a fight. And Bass had to probably put hands on him, even though he was shaking at this fact. But the man had moral principle. He had moral principle. His son served 11 years in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. You might have heard of some of this stuff before his sentence was commuted. And listen, here is the power of a Black father correcting your children. He reportedly, this is his son Benjamin we're talking about. He reportedly lived the rest of his life as a model citizen. So prove it. I know. Hey, thank you, Kevin Saunders, for chiming in, man. I appreciate you, man. Stay tuned. We're going to try to go live again, man. Appreciate your support. Like, share, subscribe, folks. So again, after Bass Reeves put the pause on his son, he went to jail, did his 11 years, and he lived the rest of his life as a model citizen. The power of a Black father, even in the 1800s, he This man changed his son's life. I mean, and again, he deleted his wife. That stuff can't be there. You know what I mean? But still. And when Oklahoma became a state in 1907, so people may not know this, 1907, Oklahoma became a state. History lesson for you folks. Reeves, then 68, 1907, became an officer of the Muskogee Police Department. He served for 2 more years before he became ill and retired. Man was 70 years old, still working. Still 70 years old. I don't know how many 70-year-old people you know, but are they still out there stomping ears together? This man is putting paws on people at 70. At that stage, he probably didn't even need to do anything, but people just knew what he was about. He's about that life. That's crazy to me. Continuing on, and we're almost done here, folks. I know this is a long one, things like that, but I don't care. I mean, that's what I'm here for, folks. It's my show. Reeves once found himself again charged for murdering a posse cook as his trial. So Reeves actually got into it. He ended up shooting somebody, as his trial before Judge Parker, man who he said he was claimed to have fired on a man by mistake when cleaning his firearm. He was represented by former U.S. State Attorney W.H.H. Clayton, who probably was not a person of color, was a white person representing a colleague and a friend. I'm sorry, hold on. All you pro-black people out there, and this man was oppressed by people of the opposite color, but he grew to have relationships with people from the opposite colors who called him a colleague and a friend. And at the time, this man was faced with deleting a person who he claimed was on accident. People of non-color went to his aid because of his labor of work, his legacy. Who was a colleague, W.H.H. Clayton. How many? What W.H.H.? How many H's do you need in here? What doesn't matter. That's his name. Reeves was eventually believed and acquitted, but he still had to go. He didn't get out of jail. Again, we got to defund the police. We're not punishing for crime. This man, he still had to go. He still had to go and fight for his own freedom, even though he had a body of work that showed, hey, man, I've done a lot of stuff, but he still was held accountable. Even then, when his son deleted his own wife, he said, yo, I got to bring you in, son. And if you resist, if you make me chase you, I'm stomping your ears together. Can we put out a campaign to talk about Bass Reeves' favorite line and salute to his family members? I'm saying this is an example of Black history that should be taught. Bass Reeves was out there stomping people's ears together, giving them what we call Western wheel kicks, roundhouse, and crescent kicks. He was about the life. He never got shot. He was only grazed. His hat was hit. His belt was hit. He arrested over 3,000 fugitives. People who were about the action, not scared of him walking by. They even tried him, and he had to body 14 of them in self-defense, which means his life was on the line. Kevin Saunders says, I know my dad would arrest me. Gotta go. Yeah, my dad too. Again, as fathers, we have to hold our children accountable. As fathers, we need to instill some morality, a right of wrong within our children. And again, it's up to our job as parents to teach our children these things about history. Reeves' health began to fail, and further retiring, he died of Bright's disease, nephritis, in January 12, 1910. I mean, this is a wonderful story. This man, we're going to get into the NFL, right? So let's talk about his family descendants, right? Here, they're descendants of this man's family now. And again, I'm for all the family members of Bass Reeves, I'm just trying to bring your ancestor to light because again, we don't even know look at the legacy he's created because this man had a history and he worked out his labor of legacy ended up being that we're going to talk about some of his family members, his descendants, because he was about that life. If you do wrong, he was going to tighten you up. In the old Western times, his son went out there, did something, bodied his own wife. He went out there and tightened up his son. Bass Reeves, if you make me chase you, you're going to get this ear stomping. He was married twice, had 11 children. So even back then, people married again, had 11 children. Nellie Jenny, and after death, Winnie Sumner. He had children, Newland, Benjamin, George, Benjamin. He was acting up, and he had to get that work. He was a great uncle of Paul L. Brady. Another first black person did it again. This is what I'm talking about. Who became the first black man appointed as a federal administrative judge in 1972. Okay, we're going to get to that on the next show. We're going to talk about another first black again, because only in the last 20 years are we talking about the hurdles of African Americans. But again, we see hundreds of years ago. I mean, what, another 10 years? It would have been 200 years ago, because we're 1838. This man would have been born. So 200 years ago, people were slaves. And this man, again, Paul L. Brady, we'll cover him in one of our later contents. We're going to give the Reeves family some shine. He is great grandson is former NFL and Canadian Football League player Willard Reeves. They spell Reeves with an A. Sometimes when you go through history, the name changes depending on because people wrote down on the census. They wrote the name. So sometimes a person would write as they heard it, depending on the enunciation of the people at that time. While his great grandsons are National Hockey League player Ryan Reeves and another CFL player, Jordan Reeves. Ryan Reeves' grandmother changed the family name from Reeves with 2 E's to Reeves EA. And that is the legacy. And again, historian Art Burton said that the Reeves was the inspiration for the character, the Lone Ranger. He makes this argument based on the sheer number of people Reeves arrested without taking any serious injury, coupled with the fact that many of these arrests were incarcerated. Many of these, I would believe that would be arrestees, were incarcerated in the Detroit House of Correction, the same city where the Lone Ranger radio plays were broadcasted. The theory is disputed. I'm just saying, I don't think he is or isn't, but there is, in May 2012, a bronze statue of Reeves by Oklahoma sculptor Harold Holden was erected in Pendergraft Park in Fort Smith, Arkansas. There's a picture of it right there. That's him out there with a dog, right? Revolver, about that action. It's going to happen. It's going to happen to you. And folks, that goes over our I want to just go scroll up here and show a picture of Mr. Bass Reeves so we can talk about our first black. And again, this is Mr. Reeves, first black U.S. deputy marshal west of the Mississippi, right? 1870 something. 75. He was sought after. He was wanted to be in this position. They wanted him because of his knowledge and skills. He became a great detective skills. His deductive reasoning was great. Superior was the word they used, not inferior. You still had racism going on at this time, segregation even. And he was superior detective skills. He had white judges and attorneys defending him when he deleted somebody else on accident. They came to his aid, his bat, and he was acquitted. His great grandsons played in NFL and the CFL and the NHL. And another so his great second grade, two greats, grandson played in NFL and CFL, Willard Reeves. His great grandsons played in NHL, Ryan Reeves, and CFL, Jordan Reeves. Legacy, the labor of your work. No excuses. He wasn't complaining about institutional this and this. He was about it. This covers our first black man in American history that probably is never taught about in schools, that people will never learn about, and the mainstream media, mainstream history. Bass Reeves, everybody, give it up for Bass. Stomp your ears together. Bass Reeves, first black deputy U.S. Marshal west of the Mississippi River. 3,000 dangerous fugitives arrests, and he bang deleted 14 of them in self-defense. The most dangerous fugitives too in the Native American territory. A black man in charge of the jurisdiction of this man. Okay, if we can't get him as the Wakanda Forever actor, can we make him a Green Lantern? I'm just going on fantasy. Can we mythologically create a Green Lantern Corps for the Native American territory west of there, and Bass Reeves be one of them? I say this jokingly, but it would be a better concept than the trash we are giving out today in the mainstream media, main Hollywood stuff that we're getting. And that's on my own opinion. This man did more that we could actually create, based off real life events. And we can make him, well, that would be DC, but again, why can't we make him Green Lantern of Sector Native American territory, where he also spoke Cherokee, Creek, and Seminolese? I don't know how that'll probably be Seminese languages, and was able to hide out the ops. And he was known for stomping ears together. And if you tried to get into a shootout with him, it probably wasn't going to work. Bass Reeves, everybody, learn about him. You're going to be taught historical figures so we can start building up a mountain of evidence. Oh, and also, what was his? He was the great uncle of, what was this? He was the great uncle of Paul L. Brady. So that this is just legacy again, who became the first Black man appointed as federal administrative law judge in 1972. So again, we're talking about 60 something years later after death, 60 years out after death, another one of his descendants, people in his family, became the first Black appointed federal administrative judge, because again, we say there are no opportunities for Blacks again. But again, I always want to say, as people say that, I'm going to create a wall of evidence talking about how people overcame and went on to do something instead of looking for handouts and being in that way. We need to teach this, folks, so you could see that you could be related to this person too. This is our legacy. This is our real history of things that went on. And people were out there. They were not what we see always in change. Once the chains came off, people went out. They started doing stuff. In Bass Reeves' case, he started putting hands and feet on people and stomping people's ears together. And he was good at what he did. And he left a legacy for people to be NFL football players, CFL football players later on today. When the chains came off, in his case, he didn't need to wait for them, because this was a brother who was not waiting to be freed. He freed himself by putting freed himself by putting hands, feet, and paws on my man, and got out of there and hid out with the Native Americans. And for them hiding him from the ops, he was then charged with overseeing their area, because he learned several Native American languages. I got a hard enough time learning Spanish. This man learned multiple Native American languages. So he protected the people that hid him out. He served the community in which he resided in. He didn't destroy it. He took the destructive people out of the community, the fugitives that were terrorizing the Native American territories that you could always try a white man charge him with, but he protected his own people at that time. He took in whites, Blacks, Native Americans, Mexican Americans, or Mexicans at the time. It didn't matter. He took them all in. And 14 of them effed around and found out. They tried and found out the hard way that this man was about that life. He was about that action. He was not going to chase you. But if he chased you, he was putting hands and feet on you, bro. Bass Reeves, everybody. Can we give Bass Reeves an applause? Shout out to Bass Reeves and the Reeves family, now spelled R-E-A-V-S, after Ryan Reeves' grandfather changed the family name from R-E-E-V-E-S to R-E-A-V-E-S. That's what we're going to give shout out to Bass Reeves. Okay. Final thoughts, folks. I will tell you all, we're still in the final stages of the flu season. We're final stages of the winter. For everyone else, health tip. Everybody needs a health tip. Okay, health tips. Health tip number one. In my family, because I'm a nurse, and I'm still a licensed nurse in many states, one thing that we do with our children when they get mucousy, you feel like their sinuses congested, we cut out milk for them. Milk, I believe, has a byproduct called casein, which actually helps to create more congestion. I have a 6 and an 8-year-old. This is not for breastfeeding. I'm not giving you medical advice. I'm just giving you suggestions on things to try out. So try to cut out some dairy or milk stuff. If your kids eat that, my kids eat yogurt, and we try to do that. And when they're sick like that, one thing you can do is supplement their liquid. If they're drinking water, you can give them something like an electrolyte-based drink, Pedialyte, Gatorade, without the sugar, to help supplement them losing electrolytes in their diet. Because when they get sick, a lot of times, if you ever drink something that has electrolytes, you'll taste it the same way. When you're sick, your body tends to lose some electrolytes, and it'll help keep them from being dehydrated on a cellular level. That is the health tip of the day, folks. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. That's your health tip for the day, folks. About land ownership, we should own land, ancestrylands.com, Ancestry Lands LLC on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Donate to the show, folks. I'm going to be coming back with more live stream. I'm going to try to educate and entertain. I'm going to try to also talk about a few certain things. We're also going to have an historical figure of note. We're going to talk about this is Black History Month, and I will be talking about Black history. Next month is Irish history because we're just going to go through the months. I don't care. I'm going to cover Mexican American. I'm going to cover everybody because cultures need to know where they come from, and they also need to know the people that helped them out along the way. Because it's not we're not being told what happened. We're being sold what happened. In school, ask your children what they've learned about a Black person that was the first of anything. You probably will only hear about Martin and maybe Malcolm. You're not going to hear about the productivity of Blacks. You're going to hear about the oppression that Blacks have gone through. You're going to hear about discrimination. You're not going to hear about productivity or things that Blacks have done to achieve in this country. We've already talked about Lewis Latimer. We're now talking about Bass Reeves, who was the great uncle of Mr. Paul L. Brady, who became the first Black appointed federal administrative law judge in 1972. Another first Black for something. And again, he was in the action area of life. So again, I'm saying, folks, ancestrylands.com. This platform is to educate and enlighten people. We still are praying for our people in East Palestine, the people in Syria and Turkey who have had a major earthquake. Apparently, there have been more chemical spills in South Carolina, I believe. Shout out to Noel Bine. He's one of my friends on Facebook. Also, he's a future landowner who's bought a property for my wife and I out in New Mexico. Thank you so much for that. He did post up there and let me know that I believe Houston, Tucson, South Carolina, there are more chemical spills, not as bad as this travesty in East Palestine, Ohio. And I'm going to keep talking about it each day because, of course, we got politicians trying to blame who, what, when, where, and how instead of giving us the details on the water. The water testing, the dangers of the water. I've also shown yesterday that the waterways for the Ohio River Basin flow into the lower areas of Mississippi Basin, the Mississippi rivers, the western states, all the way up to Montana. The waters will be getting there. These chemicals will be into our waterways and environments. We need to have some transparency. We need the politicians to stop talking about political talking points. We need them to get down and start giving us some answers and get to the action. And the Norfolk Southern Railway System, they need to be brought to light. I'm not talking about congressional, a congressional, they need to testify. What is testifying doing? They need to be brought up on. There needs to be a full, transparent investigation to figure out what's going on. The reason why I'm mad about this is my kids are going to be part of this. I'm going to be part of this. We're going to be this is going to have implications on our whole country, our healthcare system. I'm a nurse. When things happen, the healthcare system gets overburdened. Nurses have to come from one area to go to another. Look at what happened in 2022, 2021. Nurses have to fly all over different states to go there to help support overwhelmed hospital systems. This is going to have an impact on where you live. This is why you may be having longer wait times in the ER, longer times waiting to go see your doctor, lack of staff. It's going to affect your community somehow, some way. You'll see. We need answers, folks. People need to be held accountable. And I'm not just going to stop talking about it because I have other things to talk about it each day. East Palestine, Ohio, we need answers. We need clarity. We need people to be held accountable. And we need people's pockets to be tapped out. These families need to be taken care of for the rest of their lives, and so their children too. And it needs to come from the people who are in direct violation of and responsibility for all of this. That's my final thoughts, folks. Today is Thursday, February 16th, 2023. This is episode 5 of Ancestry Lands, live with Uncle Phil. This is your post-lunch time. I appreciate everyone for joining me today. I hope you are educated. I hope you are entertained, and I hope you are enlightened. Phil Davis, Ancestry Lands. Please go to Ancestry Lands and buy property. Get some property, folks. Get property. I'm going to say it every day. Own property, or you will be owned as property. buy some land. We can help you out. We can work with any budget. I have a team of people on Facebook that Eric, Marie, Crystal, and Sarah, they are all here to help you all. We can help you to own land. All you got to do is inquire. My number is on my Facebook page. It is on my website. It is important for you to own land. It doesn't need California. So what? I own land. You own land in California. You need to own land. Build some wealth for your future. Build something for you and your family and your loved ones. I am your humble host. I am so glad that you joined me today. Thank you for all the people. Like, share, subscribe, comment below in the chat. Thank you, folks. Take care and good night.